don't you tell us a little bit about sort of, I'm definitely interested kind of how you got into investing, like, and you definitely chose to, allow your capital to work for you versus the labor force. So how did that all start? Like, what is it about investing?
Well, I guess it started like, any good idea starts if you ask your wife with their idea. So my wife was really on me about opening a savings account back in the day, which I just thought was kind of crazy. So this is like 2013. And I was working as I think my title was emergency response coordinator. So basically I was going into like worst case scenario disasters, hurricanes, like airline disasters, earthquakes. And then we would do like the rebuild and everything for commercial interests. You can make a lot of money at it. So I had a ton of money in my checking account, and she's like, this is crazy. And I was just like, I'm not opening a savings account. She just kept on me. So I was like, you know what, I'll just start investing. So my whole thesis when I started investing was, okay, well, what's the world going to need in 10 years? And, what are the trends? So I started investing in distressed banks, cloud technology, desalination companies, and I was doing really well, I guess, which, everybody was like, oh, well, you're killing it. And I was like, 30% is killing it. I was like, I've been doing this for like 6 months. This sucks. But then one day I'm like at home, and Eric Holder gives a speech about cannabis and how the DOJ, and for the Canadians, Eric Holder was the Attorney General in the United States. And I was just like, wow. I was like, pot stocks. I was like, is that a thing? So I went to the Google machine and I typed in pot stocks, and it brought me to this really shitty website called Marijuanastocks.com. And I looked and I was like, I was like, these are all penny stocks. And I was like, all right, this one says they do payment processing. All right, I'm gonna buy some. And so I never bought a penny stock in my life. And I was like, do I have to buy 100,000 shares right now? And it was like a 5-cent stock. I was like, that's like a bunch of money. I had no idea with like the offer and everything. And I was never doing limit orders, right?
Right.
Because I wasn't advanced at all. So anyway, so I bought $500 worth because it said 10,000 shares, and I was comfortable with that. And 2 days later, it goes up 50%. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. I was like, pot stocks, these things are awesome. And then 2 days after that, the thing tanked. And I was like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
So I started thinking, I was like, man, that sucked, but there's something to this volatility. And it really, interested me. So, looking for information, and this is, summer of 2013, it was just a complete shit show. I mean, I wasn't even on Twitter at that point. I didn't know what cash tagging was. So I was like relying on Google, and I relied on Investors Hub because it was like the first thing I found, which is just a cesspool. I'm not even trading with level 2 at this point. So as I progress and as I start losing money here and there, and just kind of trying to understand why I'm losing money, I started to get the hang of it, and then I started putting more and more money in, and then Colorado went legal, and and that was January 2014. Around the 3rd of January, I got high at my house while my wife was with her friends, and I saw a trailer for Wolf of Wall Street, and I was like, ha, Wolf of Weed Street, that's a funny name. I was like, I bet somebody has it on Twitter already. And I checked and nobody did. And so my idea was, because I've been just like researching like all these companies, yet putting all my eggs in one basket, which nobody should ever do.
Right.
And I was just finding like lots of scams. So I was like, oh, Wolf of Weed Street, I'll be like the anti-Jordan Belfort.
Right.
So I'm doing that. Colorado goes legal. All of a sudden, like the 10 grand that I put into the market just starts climbing. And I was like, this is crazy. And by January 10th, you know, at the open, it was like 55,000. And I was like, you know, pot stocks, this thing's amazing. I was like, they're always going to keep going up. And then my buddy calls me, and it's funny because he lives in Toronto, and he's like, hey man, and I'm like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. And he's like, oh yeah, I heard you're doing well with pot stocks. I was like, dude, I'm killing it. I was like, you have no idea. And he's like, sell them all right now. And I was like, what? Sell them all? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, they're scams. You know, he's like, listen to me. He's like, I got a Bloomberg terminal. And I was like, what the fuck's a Bloomberg terminal? So we talked for like 20, 30 minutes. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not selling my pot stocks. And as I'm hanging up the phone with him, my 55,000 is now 75. And I was like, I just made 20 grand today. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to tweet the warning. So I was like, because, you know, he said that he was watching all these short positions build up, and that Bloomberg was going to release a piece on, you know, warning for pot stocks. And he just saw like this whole shit just coming down. And so I tweet the warning, and
did you have a lot of followers at that time?
Yeah, I had 500 followers.
Okay.
To just kind of give you an idea. So 30 minutes later, the sector goes down 60%. I close that day $29,000, and I'm just distraught. And I start thinking to myself, fuck, you know, I'm like just pissed at myself like anybody else. And I was like, wait a second, but I did tweet the warning. So, you know, I was a creative writing major. And then I just kind of fanned the flames of, who, you know, look at what this guy said, because the Wolf of Weed Street was completely anonymous. And then because I've been looking at the sector so long, I just started calling out the bounces, and it just kind of ended up, you know, being correct, and my followers just started increasing. And then I just took it a little further. I started looking for companies that had comparable businesses to companies that had hyperinflated market caps. So I found a company at like 004. And there was a company that had $150 million market cap doing the same thing, but less in revenues. So, you know, and that 004 stock ends up going to 45 cents in like 3 months. So it was like 10,000% gain, 1,000% gain. I'm pretty sure I coined the term unicorn on Twitter. But
that's funny.
But yeah, it was just kind of crazy. So basically from like January 1st to April 1st, my portfolio did 6,300%.
Wow.
Which is nuts. And when the bubble burst, I gave half of that back because I had no idea of toxic debt. And then we kind of entered this like 1.5 year bear market. And
that was a rough go.
Yeah, well, you know, I was lucky that I put money away, and then I, you know, tried to do other things. So, you know, almost a year to the day that I first went on Marijuanastocks.com, myself and 2 of my partners ended up acquiring it for like just under 100 grand. And
wow,
you know, that was probably the best decision in the space that I've ever made. And we only looked at it as data and as something that somebody would want to buy.
Yeah, it was a data play?
It was a data play for us. We're like, yeah, we can make money on AdSense. We'll make it free. You know, we tested it. The
domain itself was powerful. That's arguably one of the best.
It existed since 2009. So
that guy's kicking himself now.
No, trust me, he's crushing it.
Oh, really?
He had all the best domains.
Okay.
So, I mean, really, that's kind of how the Wolf was just kind of, you know, born. And, you know, I always felt that the biggest currency, especially in this, was just information, as well as understanding the reaction of the market. So I'm not a chartist. You know, I've read one book on investing, and it's just the book's called Markets, Mobs, and Mayhem, and it's about irrational exuberance in the markets. And,
Right.
you know, there's the only thing that comes close to marijuana in terms of irrational exuberance, maybe even more, is cryptocurrency.
Okay.
So, you know,
well,
but yeah,
so that website now is absolutely killing it.
Yeah, we turned it into, you know, it's funny because the day we made the announcement, somebody tried buying it from us for $1 million. And then 2 weeks later, they tried buying it for $2 million. And we just kept saying, no, no, no. I mean, in 2014, somebody offered me $1 million from my Twitter. And my wife's like, sell it, sell it. You're crazy. I'm like, no, I don't, you know, I don't think it's a good idea. And if we had sold, we would have really shortchange ourselves because, you know, I mean, people can check my disclaimers. The site does very well, and it's definitely, you know, an acquisition target.
Absolutely. So now, when did you decide to sort of show people who you really were? Because that would have been an interesting decision.
I didn't. So this is funny. So there was a company, it was called Creative Edge Nutrition. It was FiTX. And I had met the CEO at some conference and revealed myself. And the stock went to like, it was like 11 cents, but it had like 5 billion shares out or something like that. So it's crazy. So it had like a $500 million market cap. And they were saying, oh, we're going to be the biggest cannabis producer in the world, all this stuff. And, you know, I traded it once and just kind of left it alone. But then when I started looking at where they were building and what they needed to do, my work in my prior industry just kind of alerted me that this thing was a scam, because they would have to dig up the city for power, you know, water, all this stuff. And these are all things that I've dealt with before, and I know the costs associated with it. So I was like, wait, how are they going to do this with no money? And they're saying, yeah, it's happening. So I said that the company was dead money, and then the CEO ends up putting on Facebook a picture of me from like something where I spoke at like some thing with the mayor's office in Miami Beach. And he's like, this is the Wolf of Weed Street. He's manipulating the stock and shorting the stock, all of which weren't true. I hadn't even traded it. And the crazy thing, and almost nobody knows the story. So my phone just starts blowing up. I'm at a meeting, and that week, so this happened on like a Monday. On a Wednesday, and he also put my home address online.
Really?
Yeah. So he put my home address. Yeah, complete douchebag. So he put my home address of the townhouse that I owned in like downtown Fort Lauderdale. And some idiot went to my house to steal my car. All right. I swear to God, but it gets so much better. So I see my neighbor, and, you know, I'm a friendly guy. So I'm like, hey man, how you doing? And he's like, dude, the weirdest thing happened. He's like a doctor or something. And I was like, what happened? He's like, somebody stole my car, my wife's car. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. I was like, he's like, yeah, but that's not the weird part. I'm like, what's the weird part? He goes, they got into my car and they left me 4 giant buds of weed on my dashboard.
Oh,
he's like,
really?
It was like a calling card or something. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's crazy. That doesn't. And so my neighbor doesn't even know what I do. And my wife's like, do not tell him what you do. So yeah, that's how I, you know, wasn't anonymous anymore. So yeah.
Well, this community, like online and especially in the cannabis space, will thicken up your skin. That's for sure. I've had some pretty nasty personal experiences. I've had people post pictures of my family on Stockhouse. I've had someone create a YouTube channel in my name, and then take sort of my videos that we would do in our private Facebook group, and then edit them to sort of make me look bearish on a stock that I was bullish on, and others.
Yeah. So check this out. So in 2014, at like the very height of like the craziness of pot stocks. So I trended #1 on Twitter like 3 times. Somebody created a fake Wolf of Weed Street Twitter profile and added like an extra E or something. And they did an alert for this stock that was like $1. And the thing shot up like crazy, crazy. And then I started getting all these messages like, fuck you. Like, you know, how you alerted this? It's a pump and dump. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, show me.
Right.
And I was like, you notice there's an extra E in there? I mean, the shit was crazy. Yeah.
Dude, I'm not surprised at any stories that I hear. I mean, you know, when you're, regardless if you're on Twitter, I mean, people know who you are now. It's different. You're basically a public figure, right? But I mean, I've gone through some experiences myself, and it freaks me out because sometimes I'll meet people and I'll say, okay, you know, like, what are you holding? And it's very similar to my portfolio, or was, at least this was about 6 months ago. The thing is, it's like, you know, I have to make money. I'm going to sell my position. I'm going to do things. And, you know, if they're holding the bag, then it's almost like they become crusty. Right. So it's like, I don't know about that. So.
Get it. And, you know, in 2014, I was real wet behind the ears, and even, you know, I had to take some responsibility for just, you know, what I was doing, how I was saying it, even though I was very cautious by what I was saying and how I was saying it. So, I mean, now it's like, you'll never see me say, go buy this stock. Like, you should buy this stock.
Yeah, you're just careful.
People follow me on my trades, and, you know, if they follow me on my trades, they probably do pretty well. But, you know, it comes down to a lot of people not taking personal responsibility for anything that they get into. I mean, look, nobody on Twitter, on Facebook, anywhere is going to bat 1,000. If they did, they wouldn't be on Facebook and Twitter. You know, it's a reference point, and people don't really understand that. I mean, even my own friends, they're like, oh, I bought this stock and I'm down. I'm like, what do you mean you're down? It went up 100% in like a 4-month period. He's like, well, I just thought it was going to keep going. And I was like, you're an idiot, man. What do you want me to tell you?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, look, people, it's money. You know, people work hard, but they should also be like very cautious with it. And, you know, you don't believe anybody on Twitter.
You know what, man? Honestly, I'll just stop you for a second, because we have these live chat rooms on through Discord. We have our own server, and there's a couple stocks that, you know, there's more heavier volume on with our members. And, you know, I sort of I'm a tough love type of guy, because, you know, when a certain stock isn't doing well, you definitely see people's emotions. You know what I mean? And then you read all these people are like, so what are your thoughts? And what are your thoughts? And I'm like, I tell people, I'm like, listen, I don't care. Like, actually, I'll just bring it up. One of these stocks it's a mining stock, and there's a billionaire, Canadian billionaire has backed it. And, you know, personally, I've reached out to him and other people, and I've actually got a hold of them, and we've had sort of discussions. And what I want our members to know, I'm like, listen, you could do the same thing. I'm not special. You know what I mean? I just made an effort. I just tried. I sent an email. I followed up. I really didn't take fucking no for an answer. And, you know, you start building relationships that way, right? So, you know, instead of people just following others in chat rooms or Twitter or whatever, do the DD, you know, like, I'm sure, I know people talk to you. I'm sure you get flooded with stuff. It can become overwhelming, but, you know, people just got to put in an effort, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest assets of owning Marijuanastocks.com is that 90% of the companies that come to me, I reject. So every company that people, you know, loves and goes fucking crazy have come to me. I mean, like, perfect example, MedMen. And through a third party, hey, we'll give you 200. What can you do for $200,000 for a month? And my partners were like, obviously you don't go on Twitter much, because my partner, and he was talking about me, hates this company. So sometimes a company will come to me and just say, hey, you know, we need to do this. This is what we want. This is where we have some problems. And as soon as the company starts talking to me like, hey, I want the price to go from here to there,
Right.
conversation's over. I said, you know, I'll be nice about it and be like, oh, look, you know, I don't know if I could fit you in. I'll give them some excuse because that's not my job. At the end of the day, what marijuanastocks.com does is we put out the company's news, we put it out on social, we write content around whatever vertical they're in, and that's it. And we spend money for them, you know, on marketing and advertising. And I dare you to try and find something that says go out and buy this stock, because that's the first thing I'll tell a company. But because of that, I know what companies are in trouble, you know, where there are issues, and you know, how to stay away.
Right.
And that's something that people don't really understand or don't appreciate enough, is by not investing in some of these companies, you'll end up making more money and saving money, because it's all about preservation of capital and growing your portfolio. You know, when somebody tells me that they've gone down 20% on a stock, that's completely on them. You know, I look at it as 10 to 15% is my threshold, not just if I buy something at $1 and it goes down to like 85 cents, but even if I'm trading, if I buy stock at $1.50, then, you know, 10, 15% below that stock that's gone. That's going somewhere else. You should never go 10 or 15% below. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rule. You know, if it's at like support, or if it's just kind of like a sector-wide event, you know, kind of like what we saw last 2 weeks in pot stocks. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't get a commission when like I start talking about like PYX, for example. PYX was $20. It ends up going to 53. I know a ton of people that crushed it. You know, it goes back down to 23, which isn't my fault. You know, I don't control a big board company, and right. I certainly can't pump one. So, you know, if you're bag holding from the start to the end, yeah, look, I bought stock at $44. I bought stock at $35. I bought $50,000 worth of call options at 35. And trust me, I ate shit on that. So if you're losing money on something, you know, there's a good chance that I'm also losing money on something. The difference is that, you know, I'm playing you know, a much longer game, and I'm ready, you know, to suffer these types of losses, you know, at any given time. And 100% I could, you know, preserve more and follow my advice a little better. But, you know, I'm a little bit of a cowboy because, you know, to me, I feel like I've been living off of $10,000 since 2013.
Right.
So everything's just a win no matter what. And that's a very different position to be in if you're just a new investor, especially in pot stocks. And it doesn't happen overnight. You know, like if there's anything that I want to do, it's just keep people from making some of the stupid mistakes I did at the beginning. And then just kind of teach them some tricks that I've just kind of learned over time. And trust me, no lesson, you'll never learn any a better lesson than losing money. And, you know, I've been, like, I'll give you an example. I was in a position, I was up literally 500 grand on it. And I had one of my buddies come in town. I was like, oh, I'll go to, you know, let's go to lunch. Take him to a nice lunch. All of a sudden my phone starts blowing up. And I'm just big time in everybody. And then finally I answered. I'm like, what? And they're like, dude, look. And my position had dropped like 285,000 in like a matter of 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, hey, that would be a good time to have a stop loss.
Totally. I've gone for lunch with my better half, and I've literally actually lost money. All right, so people in the chat are getting fucking antsy. They want bullets. They want to talk about certain stocks. Personally, I like when you talk because I learn shit. So I would caution everybody to just simmer down, enjoy, you know, just relax. We're just hanging out here. but we can get to some stuff. Let's get this one off the table. People are wondering, are you a trader? Are you long? That was one of the questions I had written down for you. So let's start there. What sort of how do you run your portfolio?
I take long positions, so I hold a core and I trade a core. So, like, let's say I took a position in Aurora at $10 for whatever reason, and it runs up to 12, and I'm talking USD numbers. And this actually happened. So I started taking a position in Aurora when it dropped down to 4, and added, scalped. But when you scalp enough, your average just kind of, does that. So I had a base of shares that I knew I got under $7, but I still had, like 50,000 shares that were above 8. So what I did was I traded that position down like 150 cents to my average, and all that was just kind of managing the portfolio. Like, I'm very long T-God, for example, but I sold all my stock that I bought in the open market before October 16th, because I just felt like there wasn't any big catalyst to between then and the unlock to hold. But then on Friday, I ended up buying the exact same position I had with the same money for free.
Right.
So yeah, I'm long the industry, but look, there's a seasonality to the industry also.
Totally.
That season was thrown off with the Constellation deal, but it's basically from October to March. You want to be out by March 15th. You want to be cash. You want to take the bulk of your position in late January, early February. And then buy back in the summer, and that way you can be long, take a vacation. Don't be, like, make love to a woman or a man if that's your thing. Like, you need to be smart about your money and realize at the end of the day, none of us can fight the market. We don't, I don't have enough money to do it. You don't have enough money. All of us together don't have enough money to, unless of course we had some kind of super continuity, which we don't. So
let's talk about what you think we're going here into what should be the hottest part of this this sector. I remember, I think it was last year, driving through Washington State, listening to a podcast, and you talked about this this window of opportunity in the cannabis space. So what do you think, from the Canadian perspective, and then let's get your thoughts on the American side as well, because a lot of people are wondering, if capital is going to sort of flow into the US side more than the Canadian side, or maybe the Canadian side first, then the US side. But do you still see, after a significant pullback in the stocks here, in the do you still see a run here into, say, mid-January?
Yeah, I do. And I don't see that for every company. So, I would say if you look at the companies that are in like the ETF portfolios, those are safer bets to run. And I think, look, a lot of the shit companies are going to run just because they piggyback and because they're spending tons of money on promo. But at the end of the day, those things are going to get clubbed like baby seals, and that money flow is going to go to the Cannabis, Auroras, the Afritas, the Hexos, the Organograms, because they're established companies. Because any company that's trying to get a license right now, or has been trying to get one for 2 years, isn't going to be able to compete with a Canopy or an Aurora, etc. When the price per gram starts dropping or gets manipulated, just like we see in the United States, like on a state-by-state basis, so that's why you see Canopy, Aurora, etc., all planting flags internationally, because there's the blue sky for them. It's not 100% legal. That's why they're, getting set up for beverages. That's why they're, testing stuff in pharma. That's the real blue sky. So the Canadian markets, in 2014, it was the U.S. markets that supported the Canadian markets, and after 2016 midterm elections, it was the Canadian companies that supported the U.S. markets. So, you know, that's cyclical as well. So if the elections go well here, it's going to be good for Canada as well, because, you know, a rising tide lifts all ships, but it's not going to be that way for every company. You know, and that's why you really have to pay attention to how much companies are spending, like when are they doing these deals? Are they overpaying? Are they doing, you know, are they spending more, you know, double than a company that's 5 times bigger, for example? You know, these are just kind of small things that, you know, I look for. As far as the U.S. market, yeah, look, we're looking for that big catalyst. I don't think these midterm elections are going to be that crazy. I think they will be good for a couple offerings, depending on how it goes, like Trulieve with Florida, Acreage, which is IPOing, Harvest, which is IPOing, Curaleaf, Plus Products. Yeah, look, we all benefit if U.S. gets its shit together and follows you guys in an effort to, you know, for Trump to really stick it to Trudeau, because he's fucking crazy, and I'm all for it. But I also think that if that happens, you're going to see Afria, Aurora, Canopy, Tilray, etc., partnering up and just forming these super conglomerates, in which case all of those baby seals get clubbed, and then we have like a real market. So yeah, like this industry, you know, if you told me 10 years ago that I would be, you know, doing this, I would have never believed you. I mean, if you told me I'd buy a website and would make 20,000% on it, I wouldn't believe you. But that's the reality, you know. There's a lot of different ways to do very well in the sector, and there's a lot of good companies. There's a lot of companies that are, you know, just kind of under the radar, and you know, I think that, and we kind of touched on this briefly, I think that the only thing that the sector needs is it lacks continuity, right? So everybody has their own little group. Everybody tries to run their own play. You know, hey, you need to go buy this, like, and people jump from one thing to the other. You can't jump from pot stock to pot stock. Like, you know, 2014, it was okay to play Frogger. 2018, it's a bad idea, because you're always you know, if you chase, you know, you're gonna end up getting hit by that car. So, you know, it's one thing that especially new investors need to do. They need to find something. Find a couple companies. I always say, like, look for 3 or 4 companies and pick a level where, you know, you'll set a bid. If you want it at $6, set your bid at $5.50, because you never know. And that way you've got, you know, like, you've got coverage. If you're just like, I need to own this, and I've been there too, even this week, you know, I'm buying it. Like, I bought 20,000 shares at T-God at $2.90 US. The high, and it was just because, you know, I was being impatient, and you know, like, impatience will kill your portfolio in the long run.
Let's you know, let's get into T-God. I know there's a lot of people right now that are wondering about your thoughts. I remember seeing a tweet from you. You basically were very, you know, open about how you were going to play that position, and you know, November 2nd was the big day that the Band-Aid was ripped off, as you would say.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, I was talking to a buddy about this. Like, whenever you have a sentiment in the market with investors that's like really, really extreme, whether it's you know, the bulls or the bears, you can almost lock it in that the opposite is going to happen. And I feel like that was happening with T-God. Like, there is so much fucking bullshit being said about them. And then November 2nd comes, and you saw what looked like a pretty decent sizable short cover there.
Well,
that was a lot of volume.
I don't even think, I think maybe that was part of it. So you know, I'm an admin in a T-God investor group, and there's a really good post in there, because not just because I wrote it, but it basically said exactly what was going to happen. And, you know, one of the things was, look, you need to take your money now, because this thing's going to go lower, but you need to get ready, set bids, look at the warrants, look at the stock. I personally, I think look at the warrants first because everybody's just, hyper focused on the stock. But people don't realize that TGOD before the unlock had a $500 million market cap, and yet they were sitting on 375 million in cash. 100 acres here, deals in Europe, in Jamaica, all over the place. They wanted a harbor on the fact that Aurora didn't buy another 8%. Well, Aurora couldn't fucking buy another 8% because they didn't have the cash.
Correct. Yeah.
And if TGOD took their money, they would have just diluted shareholders. Instead, they took a bought deal at double the price it is today. But anyway, I digress. So even TGOD, when it had a $500 million market cap, was fucking undervalued. When the thing dropped, so I was looking at it on the US side, and it dropped to like $1.85 US, and then closed at 260, I think. That was a steal. I always look at TGOD as anything under the IPO price is a steal. But I was being greedy about it. So my first bid for 50,000 shares was at $1.65. Then it was $1.70, $1.75, $1.80, all the way to $2. Actually, I pulled the $2 one and I kept the 185. I kept the 190, and I ended up getting filled at like $1.89 for my first one, but it didn't hit the other one, so I ended up chasing it all the way to 220. And that wasn't just me. And I put like a $500,000 on the bid for TGOD, and I put probably half of that on the bid for warrants, and I didn't even get filled on the warrants. And there was a lot of people just kind of waiting because at that price it was just kind of a steal. And now we don't have to deal with any of the headache. Nothing material changes. They're still getting energy at a 75% discount to market. People like to talk about their facility in Hamilton, how they're it's potted mums. Well, like if you're focusing on that, then you shouldn't be in the stock, because you have to realize that that facility represents 6% of the total square footage of the whole operation, which is fucking nothing. And you see that, and I think a lot of it is, people have their stocks kind of like their sports teams, and anybody that's doing something and maybe has a higher market cap, they think that immediately they need to shit on it. Whereas I don't look at any of these companies as any sports team. I look at them as just numbers on a screen. I don't fucking marry them. I don't, I date them. I don't fucking take them to dinner. And if something looks off, I'm dropping them. We have to be like assassins, just completely unempathetic about these companies, because at the end of the day, this is a very early sector. It's like, from .com, Google didn't fucking emerge for a while. And neither did some of the other companies. There was a lot of shit. I mean, a lot of good companies come out of that, and we're going to see that here. But it's too long a game to waste so much energy on just talking shit about a company. Look, if I'm talking shit about a company, it's because I know something that's worth talking shit about, or, I see something that they're doing that's shady that I just think, people should stay away from. But I'm never going to go flat out and say it, because, at the end of the day, I also don't want to hurt people that are in it. But sometimes I just kind of get challenged, and,
Yeah, well, you have a big following, man. So, you've got a lot of people that are asking you questions and your thoughts and opinion. It's cool that you do stuff like this, because you can people can get it sort of more of a feel. But okay, so that's TGOD. I've never owned any shares in TGOD. I do like it. I thought it was a screaming buy on Friday, to be honest with you. That's come and gone. I think there's some pretty savvy capital markets people also behind TGOD. They're very strategic, and they've done very well. I remember going to that Hamilton facility when the 115 private placement was open, and I met Danny, I met Brent, and I really
Brett?
really liked them. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
Brent.
they're great guys. They're
They
great guys.
are, man. And unfortunately, I saw another opportunity where I had liquidity. But you know what? Whoever's got that has done well, and they're gonna do better.
To personally, like, I haven't even sent in anything, any of my private placements, and I have the first 3 rounds. So
Sick.
I don't know. I haven't touched them. I haven't even gotten opinion letters. It's a little bit different for U.S. investors, but also I don't want people to get FOMO for TGOD because not everybody was able to sell stock on day one.
Yeah.
So I think look, I got bid set at 250 and 240 for tomorrow, which is 30 cents lower. I hope it dips. Look, I'd be happy to get anything where it's at, but if I could get it cheaper, I'm going to try and get it cheaper. So, you don't want to rush in, because I think that placement, all those placements, it's just kind of, we're at that level where it's like, it kind of stupid to sell at this point, sentiment wise.
Right.
So we'll see what happens, but.
Yeah, and just a little FYI for people out there, like when a PP comes free trading like that, some people don't even know sort of what to do with their certs, or not a lot of people, to Jason's point, they can't get rid of their shares if they wanted to right away. So what he's saying is, there could be some more cheap paper hitting the market here, and it's got to do its thing and eat it up. Do you want to get away from TGOD?
Yeah, that's fine. Talk about whatever you want, man.
All right. What else? We'll get to the American side because I'm very curious. But what else on the Canadian side do you like right now?
I like
we
Aurora.
already covered it, but
yeah, look, I like Aurora. I like Afria. I like Organogram. I think Organogram is going to get taken out. I own some Organogram. I use Organogram as a bank because I think it's really stable. So, if there was a pot stock that was like a savings account, I would call it Organogram, especially off the last 2 weeks. I just, and my position isn't that big. It's like 10,000 shares, but I just think that they're probably one of the bigger targets, I think, in the sector.
Because they're undervalued?
Yeah, look, I think that they're undervalued. They're, they got a good capital structure. They grow good weed, apparently. I think somebody just kind of wants it for the brand.
Right. They got their organic license back too. A lot of people didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, there's some talk about it's really not that much. Like, it represents 5% of everything, but I don't know. That's a question for their IR department. Mm-hmm. But I like Organogram. They were actually my first client on Marijuanastocks. Okay. And that's the thing. Like, a lot of these companies were clients of mine. So I always find it funny that the longs always like to, talk shit. They're like, "Oh, you're a pumper." I'm like, okay, Aurora, Canopy, Organogram, TGOD. Yeah. So look, companies need marketing.
Oh, dude, I know. We hear it too sometimes. I mean, if you're in a company, like, there's actually some really good companies out there that nobody fucking knows about. So if you're a shareholder of those companies, are you happy when you have no liquidity? Probably not. So people need to check.
Yeah. People get pissed when they send me a company and I look at it and I'm like, oh, it looks like shit. And then they're like, fuck you. And I'm like, you just asked me, like, what do you want me to do, man? I don't like it.
Yeah.
Go on.
GTech. What do you think?
They're a client of mine. So full disclosure, they're a client of mine. It IPO'd at $1.50 and it just got fucking hammered. And this isn't, I don't think, anything that has anything to do with the fundamentals or anything material with the company. I think that this is just kind of the timing of when they went public, and you know, RTO guys are scumbags, you know.
Right.
So it's always the shell guys. So
that's kind of funny, man. We've had some bad experiences with RTO guys around here.
dude, you know, like every company I talk to, you know, right. They're like, oh, because I'll say, all right, well, you know, where are the bodies buried? You know, what are the issues that you see down the road? And they're like, oh no, friendly hands, friendly hands. No, right. Like RTO guys, there isn't an RTO out there where everybody's friendly. Right. You know,
you just don't know what's under the hood.
Exactly. You really don't. So, you know.
What about CanTrust?
I love CanTrust. I don't own any right now. And the reason I don't is because in the US, they are not DTC eligible. And you're basically trading on the gray markets. And it's like, you know, every time I've bought them, I've ended up making money, but I can't stand not knowing what the stock is doing. So on principle, I just won't own it. But I think that they're super undervalued. You know, look, if Tilray is worth what it's worth, then CanTrust should be worth 5 times what, you know, they're worth. I use CanTrust as like my apples to oranges comparison with like Tilray. Because look, Tilray is nowhere near what CanTrust is. You know, Tilray I think should be $1 billion company, not what it is, and it's more of their float just got hijacked by private equity and funds and guys like me. So, you know, but I do think that Tilray January 18th puts, or just short, is going to be the greatest short of anybody's life. So, but I like CanTrust is the long and short of it. I think they're a really good company.
Supreme
Pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, you like them?
I'm always going to love Supreme. I know Fowler's the CEO, but when I first met them, it was David Stadnick. And myself, David, and Chris Perry went out to lunch in Vancouver, and Stadnick wore a V-neck with a wolf on it. So, you know, I'm never going to have anything bad to say about about them. But no.
I can't hear Jason anymore.
How about that?
Oh, there you are.
Did you catch anything I said?
No, it was just like 10 seconds. I couldn't hear you. Not a big deal. You know what, man? I'm surprised that Aurora hasn't had a big financing as of late, like a bank stepping in and, you know, doing a bot deal.
Nah, not yet. I think Aurora does a pharma deal.
A pharma deal? Ooh,
yeah.
There's a hot take right there.
Yeah, I think they're going to do it. You know what? I probably spent 4 hours on Aurora trying to pick out a pattern of what's going on, and just kind of like learning about, you know, the short position and going back to like some data and what they did. So their short position right now is $1.8 billion. The last time it was $1.8 billion was October 1st. And then it spiked and saw a high. Now, if I was shorting, I would not hold a short going into earnings. One. So I think they're, you know, and I've seen a lot of, you know, MOC trades, like the trades that, you know, at the end of the day come in, because I've just been trading it so much. I was telling you, because I've been just averaging, you know, getting my average down and scalping like 20 cents and buying the same amount of stock. So, you know, it's like my third child right now. Yeah, so I think something's afoot with Aurora, and then seeing a trade go off at the end of the day on Friday for $6 million, $7 million worth of stock.
Across?
Actually, it wasn't across.
No,
it wasn't, because it kept on running into after hours.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out. I think that something is up. But even if nothing's up, I still think it's going to be a fucking $12 stock by January. So it really doesn't matter.
So what do you think? You know, we just had this big pullback, right? Let's say sector wide on average, let's say 35%, 40%. Don't quote me on that. But how and why do you think that happened? You think it was just manipulation?
Have you seen my calendar?
Well, let's pull that
Twitter.
Up. Good segue. Producer Wes, can we pull up that calendar from Mr. Spatafora?
Yeah. So, you know, I said this about C45, and I got a lot of heat for it, that everything was going to pull back, you know, after C45, and then I showed the days it was going to pull back.
Right.
So look, I've been doing this enough to know that smart money or big money ends up using this to get out of positions. So they know that sheep are going to just be buying into it, thinking everything's just going to keep going up even faster. I need to, you know, put my paycheck in and just fucking buy the stock.
Right.
So any kind of political event like this, C45, October 17th, or even California going legal, is met with like a 20-30% pullback. But I think that there were two big factors, kind of extenuating circumstances, that made it significantly worse. One was a lot of people were buying these positions on margin. So we saw a fuckload of margin calls. And then second, the Dow and the SPY on the 22nd, which was, I had as the day that everything was going to stabilize, and it looked that way. But then as soon as the Dow and the SPY tanked, it pulled the market with it. So look, it happens. I've seen this so many times. You know, as far as manipulation, yeah, it can play into it. I've seen it happen before. I saw it the last midterm elections in the U.S. on October 2nd, like $200 million came into the market. That's just in all these shit companies, like U.S. shit companies, Canadian shit companies, and I'm just like scratching my head. But once that happened, everybody started thinking that it was because of the midterm elections, and then the day after the midterm elections, everything pulled back like 40%. And those guys, and so I figured it out. So I looked at those stocks that had the heaviest volume, that was just an anomaly. So I figured that their 250 became like 750.
Whoa.
And they pull out, they drop, it creates panic, and then they buy the dips. And, you know, one of the things that they do is they condition the market to think that every dip is going to go right back up, because they're the ones selling the tops, and then they're the ones buying the lows. So they're just like scalping on a longer timeline, right. You know, but it's really a game of musical chairs. And I know that this isn't like theory to me, because I know this because I know a lot of guys at funds that this is exactly what they do, and they've done it in pot stocks, and, you know, like they've asked, you know,
right,
where should we go? So yeah, you have to, you know, once you realize that at some point somebody's going to try and fuck you,
right.
You know, you'll save a lot more money. And if I hadn't sold a giant chunk of my positions going into this, you know, like I sold most of my positions on the 12th, and then I sold a shitload of my positions at open. If I didn't do that, you know, like, because I started buying on Monday,
right?
And I bought a little Friday, and, you know, like, you know, I was buying Aurora at like $10, and I was like, oh, sweet, 20%, because I had it at 30%. like going down 30%. But then when the shit happened with the SPY, I was early. So now I was forced to just kind of trade, in and out of these positions to get that average lower, because I had just fired, a lot of money at all these companies. So yeah, like there's a lot of things that happen, and that I see just from trading, like watching stops get taken out. And I always feel bad, like if you're gonna set a stop, here's a real easy tip. Don't set it on like $7. Put it at like $6.95.
Yeah.
Check to see where the resistance is and the support.
Yeah, a little PA will help you.
Put it a little below. Like 10 cents isn't going to kill you, but a lot of people are like, they look at it and it's a psychological thing. They're like, oh, I'm going to put it at $7 if like the thing's at $9, and they just whack it down, those stops, and then the thing rips.
That's right.
But yeah, like there's a lot of different things that happen in the sector. It's just kind of crazy. But, again, it's a cycle and it's a necessary evil, like Rob Anderson, the first CEO of TGOD, we were talking about a company unrelated, and this is before TGOD went public. And, he's like, you need to start trading around these financings. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, if they did a deal here, or they did a PP there, that the market's never going to be able to support the amount of stock coming in. So you sell, and then you're ready to buy. And if you believe in the story, you'll do really well. And just on that alone, you could make a ton of money. So,
okay, let me ask you about a couple of small companies here. Are you familiar with VRT?
No.
Okay. Well, I shouldn't say small when I'm asking about this one, but are you familiar with FSD Pharma, stock ticker huge?
Yes.
What do you think about that deal they just announced? I think they were basically taking over. Don't quote me on this. Was it a NASDAQ listed company?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't touch huge with your dick and your producer pushing.
Okay, we can leave it there if you want.
And I feel, like it, and that's solely based off of how it traded and who I see talking about it. It could be a completely legit company, but it'll, I'll never be a shareholder of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I've never taken a position, but and a lot of people ask about it, so I'm like,
But look, at the end of the day, you can make a ton of money on shit companies. Just ask all the people that bought LG,
right?
Or Matika Resources at the beginning, and not the people that chased it in the end. And didn't realize, like, always think, like, somebody tells you to buy a stock, it's too late.
Yeah, and I mean, fuck, man, nobody should really be telling anyone to buy stocks. But yeah, you know what? I mean, a lot of our community knows about Matica. Unfortunately, there's some bag holders there. I personally was one of the people that, actually, well, to be honest with you, man, like that was one of the first cannabis companies. I had felt that I got Canopy at $3. And then I sold it at 12 after the November halts. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I've missed the first wave. What's the second wave? And another company, MYM, had just announced, they're getting involved with a late stage applicant, and there's
another shit company. Another shit company.
Right. It is. It is. It is what it is.
And it's also the same group that did Matika.
And the funny thing is, MYM was going after their license before Matica. But the funny thing is, I saw the stock move, right? This is when there was just a shitload of hype in this space, right? And so I'm like, okay, what's the next one? So I started looking at, who's going to try to, basically go from mining, a company that's doing nothing, and get into the cannabis space. And that's exactly what Matica was doing. So, I went down and met with the CEO, and, I started getting a feel that they were actually going to make a run at this thing. And, regardless of where it is now, the fucking stock went to 82 cents. I did get into their private placement at 5 with warrants, and have done very well. But you know, unfortunately, that thing's fallen flat on its face. You know, I'm still in profit, even with risk-free warrants. But you know, they just didn't execute on time, and now it's like if they're trying to compete with an LP, I mean, it's just, let's get serious here. So
they're a baby seal.
yeah, I fuck you. I hope they still do good. Okay.
But no, I hope so too, but I wouldn't bet me against that, and you'll definitely see me betting people on Twitter.
No, I hear you. I understand, and you know, deservedly so. They put themselves in this position now, so you know, if they can get something going on, you know, maybe they do a little bit. Who knows? Okay, we'll fuck off with Matica. Do you want to? So I noticed something the last week, which was some of these American cannabis plays had some significant volume, and for a couple of days were more positive than some of the Canadian ones, like an Ianthus and an MPX plays like this, right? I did get asked a question. So some people want to know, do you think there's any really good American plays on the OTC?
A couple. Kush Bottle, yeah. KSHB. I like MJ&E. I'm a shareholder. They're out of Nevada. And really, that's all that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I like TRTC, which TerraTech, people love. Yeah. I hate that company. For every $1 they make in revenue, they lose $4, and you can't win like that. Yeah, there's not many, you know, and also I'm sure there's more out there, but I've been trading the Canadian companies. So it's like, I don't need to look into the United States until there's a reason to look into the United States. Yeah. I think Kush Bottles will probably end up being a NASDAQ company at some point. They meet the requirements. They've got sick revenue, and they don't touch the plant in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So, you know, maybe, I don't know, High Times might end up being on the OTC, but, you know, I still wouldn't buy it, the High Times IPO.
All right. So what are your, so what else are you liking, man, on the US side?
I like Pyxis International, PYX.
Yeah.
So I've been trading them just kind of in and out, and I'm going to take, I took a long position on Friday, like 3,000 shares, and I bought a bunch of call options. They have earnings, I think, on the 8th. They've got a legacy cannabis business that does $1 billion in revenue a year. They have a $380 million market cap. They've got more cash on hand than market cap, which is crazy. They've got debt, and people, you know, are like, oh, they got $1 billion in debt. Well, it's not like $1 billion. Hey, you know, it's something, but they've got a business that's doing $1 billion in revenue. Right. But they've got an 8 million share float. So I think maybe it ends up getting locked. Danny Moses from The Big Short loves it. So I'll run with that guy.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people in our community that like them and ask about them. I guess I got to ask you this. So we're in November. Let's say by mid-December, over the holidays, do you think the Canadian companies still sort of take the spotlight here?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, there's, unless there's something like a material change in U.S. legislation. You know, I think yeah, I don't know, because look, and look, there's like the True Leaves of the world are going to do well into January, especially because that's when their, you know, locked up stock doesn't come free until then. So when you got a small float and you've got people in there, you know, they're going to do well. It's going to attract attention. It's also going to create all these crazy valuations. You know, I think that we're kind of seeing that now with U.S. stocks, like Curaleaf. Like I bought the IPO at $11.25 Canadian a share, and it was probably the worst fucking time to IPO. But I still think that thing's going to do well. You know, I think like Acres and Harvest are probably going to pull back a little too, but actually probably not Acreage. They'll probably just fucking run until the unlock. You know?
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about them yet.
Yeah.
Have you heard of green growth brands?
No.
Okay. Keep an eye out for them. That's a company that's backed by the people behind that are behind American Eagle, Victoria's Secret. They know the retail game very, very well. I was at a Canaccord conference here a few weeks back, and they were one of the companies I wanted to hear from. And I forget the gentleman's name, but he was really confident. He was just basically like, "Look, we know the retail space. We're going to do it. We're not in the licensing game." I don't know too much about them, but I'm very interested to see what happens with them. They're not a client or anything.
Have you guys heard of Plus Products?
You know what? I have heard of the name, I think, but I don't know anything about them. Plus Products.
Yeah, they're an edibles company out of California. They were started by some guys from a little company called Facebook. So they do gummies, like high end. They've got like the top 3. They've got like 3 of the top 5 gummies in California. Yeah, my wife is an investor. She's killing it. She invested in them like 2 years ago in their seed round because they were like, hey, we want to take this money and expand. We think we could do like $200,000 a month on this, and then they just killed it. So that one, not just a legit company, but it probably has 4 million or 5 million share float.
Right.
So yeah, you know, look, you have to. People need to pick and choose where they're going to put money. I think low floaters are a way to go for traders, but you need continuity. You know, like, because let's say we had 1,000 people and we were like, buy this stock, okay? And if it was a low float, you know, we could run it up, you know. That continuity doesn't really exist anymore. And it doesn't exist because there's so much information out there that it's really hard for people to just kind of pick and choose. But if people realize and actually did the research and saw some of these companies, you know, they wouldn't have to be told, hey, I should go and buy this. They would just gravitate to it on their own. But, you know, look, people are fucking lazy, and, you know, they just want to follow somebody on Twitter to get, you know, hey, what should I buy? I mean, look, first time I talked about TrueLeave, I put in TR, you know, I cash tag TRUL, and people bought True Light, which is an OTC company, and the thing ended up going up 568%. And when I said, hey, you're buying the, you know, like, this is not TrueLeave, and I didn't even say anything crazy about TrueLeave. I was like, you're buying the wrong company. People still bought it.
That's funny.
It's crazy. But yeah, look, you know, the Cannabis, Auroras, Afras of the world they're all going to do real well. You know, you have to look at it as we have not yet hit our blue sky for these companies. And everybody wants to say, oh, they're overvalued. Well, yeah, they're overvalued in the Canadian market. But, you know, people said the same thing about Amazon. Oh, they're not making any money. Well, you know, I'm sure the shareholders at Amazon are real pissed.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny, man. Like GMP, you know, they had that that article that came out last week in regards to earnings and sort of, you know, suggesting that they're not going to be as good. And I thought, you know what? Okay, even if they're not, I mean, we still got to look at this space and what ending of the baseball game we're in, and global expansion, which kind of is a good segue into a client of ours, which is Whaling Group. You know, they've had you know, these guys have made some really good moves when it comes to getting into countries globally. So that's one that I think people should definitely look into. That's a Canadian play. I think they've got a lot of blue sky in front of them. What companies come to mind on your end when you think global dominant player, other than say a Canopy or Aurora? Does anything stick out?
Green Organic Dutchman.
T-God?
And it's not because I'm a big shareholder, because honestly, you know, if thing goes to zero, I'm going to be fine. I'll probably still say the same thing. You know, the thing that attracted me about T-God was their cost for energy. So their cost for energy, to give you kind of an idea, if people don't know this, that if you've got to grow, especially an indoor grow, 50% of your burn rate per month, that's the money that you're spending as a company to just kind of produce that revenue, is going to be spent on power. So right off the bat, 50% of your cost is power. In Ontario, which has the, I'm sure you know, the highest power rates in Canada,
Yeah.
which is where pretty much everybody is.
And Quebec is the cheapest, right?
Yep. So they're paying 12.1 cents a kilowatt hour. Everybody else, T-God's paying 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And they have a product, they, you know, there's a reason Aurora has that offtake agreement with them, because when Aurora started, they were trying to raise money, you know, like they weren't a cannabis company, they were raising company money. And that's the same with Canopy. And, you know, to get to this point, it took a lot, but they didn't have the money to, hey, we're going to grow organic. It's a higher upfront cost. T-God just kind of saw, hey, this is the niche, and yes, it's going to cost us more, but look at this discount we can get on power. And if we do grow organic, you know, there's a 30% higher margin, and you know, it's premium cannabis. So now with a 30% higher margin and a 75% reduction to power,
Yeah.
how do you compete? Even if T-God at one point decides, hey, we want to scrap this whole organic model, it won't matter, because when the prices of cannabis compress in Canada, T-God's going to have a 75%, you know, lower rate to create that, and they're going to be able to beat people up on price and just steal market share. That's why a lot of these companies are going to get killed.
You know what, dude? I totally agree with you on T-God. Again, just for the audience, I don't own a fucking share of T-God. I never have, but I really do like the company. And I think, you know, another one that comes to mind, again, when you think of a company that's, you know, sort of they're building to last, and to the points that Jason just made, again, is like a Whaling Group. You know, the gentleman that's building that facility did very well in Colorado when, you know, basically cannabis became a commodity, and they're building a fantastic facility out here in Southern Ontario and keeping their costs down. Even the way that they're sort of circulating the water, the rainwater, and reusing it, just little things like that. And to your point with T-God, you know, executing a big, you know, they're the biggest part of their grow in Quebec. I mean, that's a huge advantage. And then you've got the organic,
the organic edge. And then look, you've got a bunch of guys that are from the beverage industry. You got the CEO who was CFO at Procter and Gamble, which, you know, is a giant conglomerate. You know, they're going to do a deal. I think, you know, they do some kind of deal in the beverage space. It makes sense with all their guys from Cott. You know, there's a lot of speculation. Who's it going to be? Well, you know, who makes the most sense? It's going to be Afria. It's going to be Canatrust. It's going to be Aurora, or it's going to be, you know, T-God. Right. I don't think it's going to be Tilray, because Tilray is way too fucking expensive. because they're not worth what their market cap is, which I think that, you know, like I am pulling for Tilray to keep going up, because the higher that thing goes, you know, it's not going to be able to fight gravity once that stock unlocks. I think it'll be it'll be the easiest money that anybody's probably ever made in this sector.
That's funny, man. Yeah, you know what? I remember hearing a story about Tilray back in the day when that thing shot up over 3. I think it was I was told it was a big short cover, and then someone had to actually pull some of their other positions to cover that short, but that's speculation. Let's get into some hot takes here, dude. Beverage company deal could be T-God. You think Cannabis out of bullets for this year? You think they have anything left? Like a big catalyst on their end?
Pharma, probably.
Oh yeah, okay, pharma.
You
mentioned Aurora in pharma, right?
It makes the most sense because of Canamed and Med Relief, and I see some. They just flew somebody over from, I think, Ireland, some kid named Billy, to get some like cannabis medication. So it's like you know. When you market, and you know this because you've got clients, you plant flags, and you see which ones like people gravitate to. And I've been seeing a bunch of flags being planted on Aurora on the pharma side, just kind of as a way, maybe it's coincidence, or maybe they're planting little seeds,
right?
Conditioning the market.
I think a buddy of mine was telling me, I think it was Friday, didn't Afria have a news release where they snuck in a new director from Diageo?
Yeah, something like I did. Did you know that Diageo's Quebec office is 850 meters away from T-God's facility?
I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
You know what, man? I know a master grower, and he fucking raves about T-God's master grower. He says he's probably one of the best in the business. I'd love to interview him and sort of get him on here, and we can get more into like cannabis. And yeah, all right. Well, we're probably getting fucking, I don't know how long we've been going for. I don't really care, but all right, an hour and a half. The producer likes that.
Anybody have any other questions? Time to fire away.
Yeah. What do you think about ISIL? I'm just looking at whatever's up here in the comment section.
I'm really conflicted about ISIL, because I have guys that I really trust, and like, for the most part, know what they're talking about, and they're not like Twitter guys. They're like fun guys, and they're like, no, ISIL is going to be doing well. And then I got guys that have told me some shady shit that ISIL's done. All right, I'm just going to share this, and I know I shouldn't. I'm not going to drop a dime on anybody, but somebody through an intermediary reached out to me and was like, will you take money if you, like, I'll pay you 10 grand a week if you tweet bad things about ISIL.
Right.
And I was like, it sounds like a legal minefield. I go, not what I do. And I was like, like, how do I disclose that? Right. I was like, just off that, I was like, there's no way I'm doing it. I go, why does this person, want me to do this? I'm like, just trying to understand it. And he's like, well, he's got a $5 million short against ISIL. And
that makes sense.
I was like, okay, but why? I was like, why did somebody have that big a short against a company that's trading at this? And then he was like, well, and then he shared like some shady stuff, like kind of self-dealing. And I was like, oh, and I was like, that's pretty fucked up. I was like, I was like, all right. And I kind of looked, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I see what he's talking about. So I don't know. Like I don't really know much about ISIL. Let's move on. What was the other?
I have a question from a friend I'm going to ask you in a bit, but Namaste, I've seen that pop up a
Fuck
bit.
Namaste. Fuck Namaste. Such idiots. Look, and I like Corey. I think we're friends. We might not be friends anymore. Last January, I told Corey, I was like, look, you need to start thinking about doing some marketing or something come, April, March. And this is January when he's like fucking, hot stock. And he's like, no. I'm like, look, I was like, I'm not telling you to go with me. I'm just telling you your stock's going to drop by 50%. And he's like, no, it's not. And I was like, okay. And then I sent him an email like, hey, look, I think that, what is it, Corey, and who's the other guy? Who's the other CEO?
Sean?
Yeah, Dillinger. I think that they've got something really good in terms of data, but these guys aren't CEOs. They need to stay on board and run the operation, but you can't, have like a pledge, and I just can't take you seriously from that. I just thought it was really stupid. So I hate, self-inflicted wounds, especially at the cost of shareholders, because Namaste shareholders are a fucking cult. So yeah.
Okay. I would agree that Namaste does have some very, very loyal shareholders. What about Tinley, dude? Have you heard about Tinley?
Fuck Tinley. Fuck Tinley. What do you have a list of all the companies I fucking hate?
I'm reading it off here, man. I'm reading it off, bro. All right.
Tinley CEO sent me an email to pull my tweet down. Jeff Mazer, if you're watching this, eat a bag of dicks. Yeah, he sent me, and I was like, I'm not fucking pulling any tweet down, because Tinley ran after Canopy did their beverage deal, and they were trying to position it with like, oh, we're the next buyout. And I was like, nobody's fucking buying you out. So, and look, everybody piggybacks off of Canopy. Bruce will tell you the same thing if you have him on here. And for the most part, he doesn't care, but like, you're piggybacking. If you're piggybacking, it's okay, but don't think that you're, the next Coca-Cola of cannabis. So I just kind of took issue with that.
All right. What about Tetra Biopharma? Have you heard about them?
TBP?
Yeah.
Orphan drug status. I sold 250,000 shares at like 60 cents US. Which I guess was a mistake because it ran. Yeah, I think that if you don't mind the way it trades, and you can hold, yes. If you got a good price and you don't need to babysit, I think their whole business model at this point is to just be acquired. I don't really think that they give a shit about anything else at this point.
Hexo.
Yeah, I like it.
You like Hexo?
Not just because I've made money on it, but people like to pan the Molson Coors deal, but it's still a big deal, and it'll have impacts on the company, even though I think they probably gave up more than they needed to.
Yeah. Well, they've got Quebec down. They've got some good supply agreements, man.
Yeah, look, I think it's it's a great company.
For friends in the chat, I've already asked them about VRTs. Doesn't know. I have a comment on VRT. What's going on with that company? I thought they did they just exit human trials and are now into animal trials? Comment in the chat. Cantab, I've seen that asked about 50 times. Do you have any thoughts?
Which one?
Cantab.
Give me a symbol.
Fuck. Well, off the top.
Cantab.
CXXI. That's not Cantab though, but let's move on to that one.
That's okay.
Fuck. I know the Cantab ticker, man.
Just looking at the chart, it looks like an abortion. So now,
Pill. There you go. Thanks, guys.
or a gravestone. It looks like a giant gravestone or a bud of weed.
Okay, so fuck. There's a couple other ones there. Oh, Believe. What do you think about Believe?
Man, they were a client of mine.
Really? They did promotion? Marketing?
Yeah, they did. And we spent a lot of money on marketing. Actually, so the way marketing works, so if you see a disclaimer that a company's paying me $1 million, $1 million doesn't go into my pocket, or else this would be like gold plated. So we take 20% to just kind of manage, because we spend money on digital. We spent so much money on digital. I don't know what the hell was going on there. I think at like where you'd be looking to feel comfortable is about 90 cents US. So whatever that comes to. I like what they're doing. I think that their deal with Uxley, which used to be Cannabis Wheaton, is probably the thing that's dragging it down.
I would agree. Yeah,
so
I don't even know why they did that deal, but
it's just a really shitty deal, and there's no way they're ever gonna, people that know, like the price per gram, they'll never get out of that. So if they renegotiate that deal, then I'd probably buy it again.
Emblem.
I wish I had my cert here, but I sent it in. I still have my PP shares from November 2016. I refuse to sell Emblem just out of principle. I think that their CEO doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
What happened to the pharma thing, dude? Like, I remember
I told them as much. You want to here's a little factoid for you people. So like 8 months ago, remember, or not 8 months ago, I'd say maybe February or early April, they were just getting killed, and they were real close to the price of their PP. And I was just like, oh, this thing's gonna go up, because it's pretty much been like a clock. So I bought like 100,000 shares, and just because I was just like, just for a flip. And I just couldn't understand why it was doing what it was doing. And I'd reached out, and I'd had some issues with Gordon Fox. So I sent Gordon Fox an email the day, like a week before he resigned, telling him to resign. And I CC'd all the biggest shareholders.
I remember this very well.
And I told him either resign or we're going to call a vote on him. And then the new CEO came on board, and then he wanted to talk, and I was happy to talk, especially after I'd retaken a position. And I told him, I was just like, this is what you need to do. I'm like, this is all free advice. You take it whatever you want. And I kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, and then I just was like, I'm getting out of this shit. But one of the things I said to him was, hey, do you think Jon Stewart, who is their president, like, do you think he's going to have any issues with everything that's going on with OxyContin in the States? And he's like, no. He's got no legal exposure, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, great. And a couple months later, what happens? The Attorney General in Massachusetts brings charges against Jon Stewart from Purdue Pharma. A lot of people haven't even seen that.
Dude, I didn't even know that, because that's where I was going. I was like, what happened to him?
He's still there. So I don't know what's going to go on with pharma. And the crazy thing is, last month I was in Spain. So I was in Spain for like a month, and we were there to go to a wedding. And
you went to Spain to go to a wedding.
Yeah. So I stayed for a month. I felt like why not?
Got it.
I did my best trading over there though, because the market opens at 3 p.m. It's nuts. But anyway, so at the wedding, one of the guys at my table worked for the attorney general that indicted him.
Wow.
And other charges are going to come from different states. That's just the first one. So, yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I've got like 43,000 shares.
That's like I get it. Like, man, that fucking drug. What was it? What was he behind? It was Oxy, right? Yeah, that's like
OxyContin, $3 billion a year. And one of the things that I said to Nick was, and the reason I asked if there was exposure, I go, why aren't you guys fucking parading Jon Stewart to the public, telling him like what you guys are doing? Their burn rate, they were spending like $90,000 a month. That was their burn, or maybe it was more. I forget. It was either 90 or 900,000. I forgot. It was some crazy number. And I was like, well, like the only thing that makes sense for the amount that they're spending a month is something in pharma. But if that's the case, why aren't they, doing it? Actually, when the stock dropped, I called the guys from T-God and I was like, why don't you guys acquire them?
I was like, yeah, because they know them well.
I was like, you've got the cash, you guys raise the money. I go, look, it won't even cost you that much money because all you have to do is get the shareholders to vote against them, which you guys raised a lot of that money. So you could probably go to the shareholders and we could, like, let's take this bitch over. I was like trying to do this deal and they were just like, fuck no, we want nothing to do with it. It's got too much shit in it. So.
Wow, they didn't want it. They probably. I'm thinking
it had a $90 million market cap, and they didn't want it. That just kind of tells you.
Interesting. Well, there you go. We talked about Emblem for a while. What are you familiar with? No, we talked about Liberty Health Science. Let's talk about that. You like them? Don't like them?
Yeah, I like them.
Okay.
They'll do well.
New Strike?
What's the ticker on New Strike?
HIP.
HIP?
Yeah, HIP.
Yeah, I've heard it mentioned, but I've never looked at them. Sorry.
Okay, all good. Is there a dark horse? I got someone actually text me a question like, do you see something in this space that is sort of a dark horse, something that will do well that nobody's really talking about, like making maybe little subtle moves. Personally, I think that's Wayland, but they're a client, and I don't care because I like them, and that's why they're a client. But what do you think?
See, it's hard because, like, I want to say one of my clients, but I want to keep it objective.
Well, you totally just undermined me, so fuck you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I think Wayland. What's Wayland's symbol?
WAY. It used to be American.
Oh, I think they might be a client of mine.
Well, check, man. No.
I don't know, man. I see. Like, I've got two other partners, and we each bring in our own deals, and then we've got one partner that's like the digital nerd, and he just runs everything. And then I've got the interns from Miami, and then the other writers, and it pretty much runs itself. But
that's a good business, man.
A dark horse. I think maybe Canatrust.
Yeah.
And
they still have a big valuation, though.
They have a big valuation, but look, if I had to bet against a big valuation company and a small valuation company, all right, maybe Choom. I think Choom's going to get acquired.
I think they're going to get acquired. Yeah, if you look at the way it's trading, it was outperforming the whole sector really when it was crashing. So what the fuck is that all about? Listen, I don't care that fucking Wayland is a client. I'm telling everybody right now, go do your due diligence on Wayland. Used to be called American. Just go look at their news releases. I'm not here to pump them. Let their global expansion sort of, do the talking there. I think they're.
How many countries are they in?
Oh fuck! You had to ask me a tough question. No, I think they're in 4, and I'm gonna get hammered right now. What's that, producer? Make me look smart. No, they're in 3 or 4 right now. Well, someone list them off in the comment section. Like, I believe they're in.
How about this? How about this? Instead of talking about a specific company, let's talk about something that most people are just not focusing on, which is industrial hemp. It's going to make a lot more money than cannabis in the long run, because every single piece of the plant, from the stalk to the seed to the leaf, is usable for something.
I'm totally down with this, Jason. I just want to leave off on the last topic there. I don't want to get into what countries Waylon's in, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, and there's a reason for that. But yes, I'm glad you brought up hemp. Amazing. Let's talk.
Well, I was trying to pivot for you.
All right.
Yeah. So just industrial hemp. That's really, it's going to dwarf the cannabis industry.
Correct. So, dude, I've been trying to figure out who's going to be, like, for example, the canopy of the hemp space. Do you think that there's someone already trading now that is, or do you think that's still to be determined? Like a Bedrocan type play.
MPX, Aurora, PYX.
Well, that's no fucking fun.
Well, look, it's who's capitalized. Look, there's companies that you've probably never heard of that are probably going to dominate, and they probably won't ever go public. Okay, so Ianthus has a $7.5 million investment in this company called The Green Solution. Crushing it. It's probably the best investment that Ianthus ever made, and they probably wanted this company to go public. Everybody says, oh, this, like somebody on Twitter was telling me that MedMen has the biggest footprint in the United States. Just complete fucking bullshit. MedMen's probably the fucking shadiest company out there. Real business, but the Pubco is, it's a piggy bank.
Right.
There are a lot of private companies out there that are destroying revenue. I mean, look, even Trulieve has higher revenues than any LP in Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
And
like the population of Florida is like the population of Canada almost, which is crazy. So imagine if there's a rec market, for Florida.
Yeah.
You're talking about, that thing. Oops. You're talking about that thing going up like 5x. If they make it federally legal, now you're talking about a company that can export globally and just beat the shit out of all the East Coast Canadian players in terms of shipping. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of things. There's so many moving parts to kind of keep your eye on, especially in this space. But,
where's the state of Florida at with rec cannabis?
Probably, 2 years out, but which is a real good spot for Trulieve to be, and even Liberty Health,
right?
Because I just had a dinner. It was I should say it was a lunch and a breakfast, lunch, and dinner at this guy's house in Miami Beach, and it was all just giant players in cannabis space and pharma. Some pubcos, and they all say, like, especially in the state of Florida, like nobody can compete with Trulieve. And we were talking about the rec market, and they were just like, yeah, they don't want a rec market, because they're crushing it with the amount of patients again. Every, you know, they're just killing it. And, you know, Liberty Health is doing well, and there's a lot of issues with license holders, but there's also a lot of money here. So, you know, it's a huge gateway.
I have to, I've been corrected. So Wayland's in Malta, Italy, Germany, Canada, and Switzerland. And they're into industrial hemp. So
where do they do industrial hemp?
Germany.
Oh, it's a good area.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just telling people to do their DD. I definitely think it's one of those dark horse things. Beverages. You think it'll be the biggest part of the market?
No. Not even close. Nothing's gonna dwarf pharma.
Well, okay, so funny. I was at a car dealership over in the summertime, and so there's this gentleman there, and yeah, it's chatty Cathy, older guy. I can tell he's pretty super successful, and you know he's just about to leave, and you know I actually overheard him talking about cannabis, and he was telling the salesman, he's like, I gotta go, I got a meeting downtown, meeting with Big Tobacco. So I had to go and, like, you know, introduce myself. I was like, hey man, I heard what you said, you know, like, what do you do? And he told me you had a big cannabis facility somewhere not too far from Toronto. I don't remember the name. I think it's private. And he said, yeah, man, I got meetings with Big Tobacco downtown, so I gotta go. Whatever. He handed me his card. Have you heard any rumors about, you know, Big Tobacco stepping into this space?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that I know the companies that they're talking to.
Starts with an A or a C?
Oh, I thought you were talking about which tobacco company. You know, my partner, his grandfather had a giant tobacco company. So yeah. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, they're talking to private companies and they're talking to public companies, and which makes the most sense for me from a tobacco standpoint would be Pixis, because they already have a tobacco, you know, they're already a tobacco company in the cannabis space. Where do you think $1 billion a year revenue comes from?
Right.
You know, so that would be seamless. So if, let's say, Philip Morris wanted to come in, well, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we'll get this. We're taking your tobacco asset, and you know we've got this cannabis asset with like Figer and all of the hemp stuff. Right. Because I think that's what's going to be the transition for a company, a tobacco company. It's not going to be for making marijuana cigarettes. Right. It's going to be for creating, you know, shifting from tobacco to industrial hemp. And for the most part, a lot of them don't need to partner up with cannabis companies. Actually, none of them do. You know, it's more of a fad. If they are looking at, you know, like the Marlboro, like, you know, like marijuana cigarettes. Like, have you seen like the packages, like for weed cigarettes that are like Marlboro?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that shit's real.
Right.
And I know that's real because my partner's grandfather is like, yeah, I've seen the test packaging for marijuana cigarettes.
Right.
You know, because at the end of the day, all the tobacco is pretty much the same. It's just what box you put it in, and then what stamp and where you're exporting it to, or whatever. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for industrial hemp because of the way that it grows, and because look, tobacco farmers are getting just killed every year. It gets, you know, more and more expensive, but they also see like, okay, you know, people that smoke weed smoke cigarettes, and we want to just grab as many of them as possible.
Right.
So while they don't need to take on any of these companies, and I think some of these companies, you know, like the brands that they've established, you know, look, if I had to pick a tobacco company to buy into any LP, it would be Afria, because my feeling is Afria just doesn't give a fuck, and they'll just do the deal, and they've 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 got the production to do it. You know, like I don't see like an Organigram, because, you know, it's an organic, like, oh, we're making a healthy choice. And same with T-God. I don't think it'll be a tobacco company. I think it'll be either pharma or beverage. I mean, in the beverage space, I think T-God makes the most sense.
How do you think that deal would get structured if it was a beverage company? Would you, you know, like say, for example, let's look at the Constellation, you know, how they came in on Canopy. If there was a beverage deal, what do you think it would look like?
I think it would look like that. I think, from what I'm told, beverage companies have already made offers to LPs. And the LPs are basically telling them to fuck off. Not that they don't want to be in business with them, but that they're not realizing the overall value of this long term. So they don't want to do shitty deals. At least the bigger LPs don't. I think Hexo was kind of a shitty deal. And really for Hexo, I think it'll be good in the long run, but I just think I shouldn't say shitty, because that implies a negative. I should say, I think that they could have done better. I think that they thought, oh, this is going to be great. But I think that also the market kind of saw through that, or else the stock would have exploded. So yeah, the way that I think that they would structure it is similar to what Constellation did. You take a minority stake, 9.9%. That way you're not an insider. You test how, you know, like what your investment did. I mean, look, if I was Diageo, I'd take a fucking 10% stake in, you know, 3 companies, because all of those companies are going to run, and then your 10%, you know, like Constellation put in 300 million. That 300 million became 900 million.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, they killed it.
Like that.
Yeah.
It felt safer. And, you know, even the bigger deal, I mean, it took a year to put together that Constellation deal. It just happened overnight.
Yeah.
So, you know, and this is why I'm happy that like Aurora and T-God, you know, that Aurora didn't finish that with that option, because there's no way they can do it, you know, they can get a deal. Right. Because if, let's say, somebody wants to acquire T-God because they've got organic, well, now Aurora is tied to them, and they've got that 51% option, right, which would make it would have to be a 3-way deal, which just won't work. So, look, I think you're not just going to see, like, in an ideal situation, I'm just going to use T-God because it kind of makes sense. In an ideal situation, I'd like to see a beverage company come in and take 25% of T-God, and then a pharma company to come in and take, you know, 24%. Mm-hmm. Keep the voting rights in T-God's hands, and, you know, and then that's it. And I think we will see some kind of deal like that. And this is, you know, like 5 years down the road, when like Canopy's got like is trading at like $150, or, you know, Aurora is trading at $50, because they are going to become these like conglomerates of weed. Right. And they're going to cover it. You know, there's going to be the Snickers of weed, the CBD, the, you know, tobacco, and all this shit, and they're going to look a lot like fucking Johnson & Johnson or Procter & Gamble. Right. At that point.
Yeah. Well said. You know? Well said.
So people, you know, like, look, it's gonna happen, and pull for it to happen, you know, just because, you know, like, would I be bummed if it was Afria that got a deal instead of T-God? Well, Yeah, of course I would. Any shareholder, anyone, you know, like if you got a bigger position in one company, of course you're going to be bummed. But should I be bummed? The whole fucking sector is going to rise. Even these shit companies that I hate are going to rise. So, you know, like it won't really matter. So, you know, when it happens, everybody pull for it instead of talking shit about it like a bunch of fucking kids.
Yeah, dude, I agree, man. I echo all of your thoughts there. You know what? I wanted to mention Naturally Splendid. Do you follow them at all?
No.
Okay, because they're in hemp. What about Green Thumb Industries?
Yeah, I follow them.
Okay, you like them?
Yeah, I like them. They crushed it. I mean, they've got one of the bigger footprints in the United States. Good capital structure, small float. You know, look, the only I know it shot up and then shot down, but look, that's what you're going to get on a small float. You know.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
they're good company. Look, U.S. companies are going to do well.
Yeah.
You've got a couple IPOs that are coming out. You got Curaleaf that just IPO'd. Then you've got Harvest. You've got Acreage. Somebody sent me one called Tilt, but it looks like a fucking nightmare. So I'm not touching that. Yeah, well, you know, you got U.S. companies. I mean, look, I'm trying to get a couple companies to just go public in the U.S. They don't want to go public. They're like, no, why would I give money away?
Have you followed? You might not have heard much about them because they're private, going public. Cannabis.
Yes, I've heard of Cannabis.
Do you like them?
I don't. You know, I
don't know much about them.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know, it doesn't like wow me in any way.
What about a company that has some U.S. exposure? A Crop. Do you know Crop? Yeah, it's ticker Crop.
I know Crop.
It's more of a REIT play, isn't it? Kind of like a cannabis REIT play.
Yeah, you know, there's a company IIPR that, you know, was just a REIT deal, and then they had to pivot. You know, so I mean, look, we got people on here. Should we tell them how to fucking where the next big trade is? We break it here because I'm feeling generous.
Do it.
All right, look, what everybody needs to be looking at, and I've tweeted about this, that I had something bulletproof with a fucking unicorn and the guy from Silicon Valley throwing up cash. And nobody was talking about this before. So I'm basically going to suck my own dick here for like 30 seconds. So you're going to have to bear with me. Because I'm basically just giving this away.
I don't know if you can find them because they're probably like...
Remember, look, the ETFs are rebalancing in December.
Okay.
So you really watch my tweets, because this has become the best trade, or, you know, you get 4 of these trades a year. So we're going to watch and see, you know, what they need to get rid of and what they need to take size in. So I'll just tell you what I do. And I've already started doing it. So I go on their website, like ETFMJ.com, and then there's Horizons. Those are the only ETFs that matter. So I'll go and I'll take a screenshot of their portfolio holdings from now till the end. And you want to focus on the shares, not the percentage, because the percentage right now doesn't really matter. They have to, you know, as we get into December, you're going to start seeing some of these positions go back up, especially because they've all gotten hammered, but on a percentage basis. So MJ, which is Alternative Harvest, has a 7% threshold. What that means is any security that they own, like if, let's say, they have 10% of Canopy, they've got to bring it down to 7%. All right. And then you can figure out what that looks like from a share, you know, like, you know, basically their share position. So, okay, so now you know they need to get rid of Canopy. Well, now you know they need to get rid of part of Tilray. They need to get rid of part of Aurora and blah, blah, blah. And they can put a lot of pressure on the stock, especially if it's not as liquid. You know, Canopy, it doesn't really matter because that thing trades like a beast.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, okay, well, then where should they put their money? So I did this. I wrote a piece on Marijuanastocks about ETFs, and I talked about Aurora. That rebalancing, I think, is what got T-God to its all-time high in September, and Aurora. That's what made Aurora spike also.
Gotcha.
And a couple other companies. So that's a really good trade, and easy trade to not just make to go long on something, but to take profit on other positions. So, you know, just be on the lookout for that, because I'm gonna pretty much have that dialed in. I think, like, you know, from that standpoint, I think Tilray is under just a ton of pressure.
Right.
So I'd be looking at put options, or I'm already buying December 18th put options on Tilray.
I actually dropped your Twitter thread in our comment section where you actually talk about the ETFs rebalancing, because you've predicted that before, and it looks like you were right. What about, you know, signing up to marijuanastocks.com?
It's free.
Yeah, it's free. You wanna plug it?
Sure, sign up. I get about 1,000 new subscribers a day. So if you don't want to sign up, yeah, I get a double opt-in, email, phone number, name. So yeah, like I said, we looked at it as data. So if, let's say, I had to pay to onboard those people, I'd be looking at like $20 average per person.
Nice. Yeah, data. We know a lot about that. I mean, so we've got our website, FTMIG.com. People can go there and sign up. It's also free. And I don't know how things go in the US, but over here we have a partner with an EMD. So the advantage over here to signing up to FTMIG.com, again, it's free, is you can get access to opportunities like, you know, seed investments and private placements. So, you know, Mr. Wolf, that's kind of what we focus on here in our private Facebook group is, you know, especially after an experience like Matica, which you touched on. You know, you're not a fan of it. I totally get it. The funny thing about it is when you get in so early on plays, man, you've got
doesn't matter.
Exactly. And, you know, what I'd like to take a moment here with you, because you've got so much experience. We've still got strong viewerships on this live. I want to preach to people that, look, we're talking about all these companies that have big valuations. You can probably do really well with them. You can trade them. They're going to have their run again. They're going to have their lows, whatever. But try to find, this takes a lot of work, but try to find ground floor opportunities where you can get to know management and, you know, companies that have the wind behind their backs. Either, you know, they're going to do some marketing, going to do some promotion, not the bad stuff, but just, you know, they have a good story, but they're going to tell it. If you get in early enough on these nickel and dime raises, which, look, they're hard to find, but they're out there, you know, you can get yourself into a 3 or 4 or 5 bagger, sit on your warrants, and you know, and keep a close eye on the company. So, you know, that's kind of what we focus on over here. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and 100% Canadians have a huge advantage over the United States just by the nature of the way you guys raise money.
Right.
So, you know, like, you know how hard it is for me to do a private placement? You know, like it's nuts. You got to go through this and go through that, where I'm like, I just want to fucking buy it. Like, you know.
Right. And you know what? I know our EMD. I mean, there are ways of getting Americans in, but, you know, I'm just telling people, like, you can sign up on our website, ftmig.com. At least, you know, legally you can get sent certain opportunities. Depends what you check off, blah, blah, blah. Do your own DD. But, I mean, you know, you have a huge following, and we have, you know, we do have these opportunities, so maybe we can hook up in the future. But do you invest in any other sectors?
What do you mean, besides pot? Of course.
Well,
of course.
Okay. What, like what?
Oil and gas.
Okay. Well, probably not in Canada.
Biotech. Well, I play leverage ETFs.
Oh, I got it. Okay, gotcha.
So I think one of the best and easiest trades that I make are just scalps, if you've got the margin to do it. So I hate Donald Trump, and I'm a Republican. But when he talks shit about like tariffs or anything, I'm like immediately buying a TVIX, which is a leverage ETF. If the market's doing shitty, this thing goes up.
Right.
It's the VIX.
Yeah.
So set your notifications to Donald Trump, especially if like the spy or anything, is just shitting itself. Or if you talk shit about a company, like he's done it a couple of times. That's been an easy one. I like leverage ETS for oil and gas. Really, so 2015, I think all I traded was oil and gas, like ETFs. Like I was making money just hand over fist. And that's something like, because you can factor in climate change. Is it going to be a colder winter? Like, are there going to be, was there a fucking pipe that, exploded or some shit? And those swings are great. But yeah, I'm really getting into options.
Yeah, I saw that on your Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
I don't blame you, man. Especially if these companies now, you can do that like an Aurora.
Well, especially because my thing was like the more companies that are pot stocks that go to big boards, the better, because they already trade within a pattern, and I don't think the Wall Street guys don't fucking know that. They just look at them as numbers on. They haven't been looking at these things. So like even like the options on Aurora, it was like $7.50 call options for December. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? December, like, do I think that Aurora is going to be $7.50 USD by December? I was like, yeah, all day. And I look at the price and I'm like, you're kidding me. So, for the US guys, take a look at the Aurora options, because I think that they're like super underpriced. But yeah, look, I'll buy anything that I think I can make money on.
What we haven't touched on is the S&P and the correlation with the cannabis sector.
Yeah.
In the last month. Dude, what do you think about, the US is booming right now. We know they're over 4% GDP. We have an issue here because we're not even close to that, and we sort of have to hike when you guys do. So it's kind of creating a debt issue, I think. But what do you think about your global economy? Global economy. What do you think about the U.S. economy?
I don't. I think it's in trouble, honestly.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of the tax cuts, even though it really benefited me. Like once I realized that once the tax cuts passed, I just went and bought my wife a Denali for Christmas. And like the Mac Daddy Denali, she loves it. But my feeling is that debt is starting to build up, not just in national debt, but credit card debt, student loan debt, and it's really delicate. So I think that those tax cuts are going to end up fucking a lot of people. So my plan is to just kind of keep as much cash on the side and out of the market, and that way when it does happen, I'm able to put my money in safer things and then just be cashed up.
Yeah, so you're looking at the U.S. economy, like a lot of people think it's topped, and obviously there's a pullback here, not a bear market, but I'm going to watch the S&P closely to see if there's a double top, and but I think it's going to run again here. I think it'll be more of a slower thing. I think the end of the year is going to be rather strong, but a lot of global markets are in bear markets, and the U.S. has done really, really well. but it's like, where do you guys go from here? You know what I mean? You're looking at the some of these earnings they're missing. The forecasts don't look the greatest. You know what I
It's
mean?
also
So
because it's because of these tax cuts. You had all these corporations do the buybacks, and
right,
it actually hurts earnings.
right,
You know, look, the only thing that I'm happy about right now is that the pot stocks became untethered from the S&P and the Dow, because up until Friday, we were moving in unison. If you looked at the SPY chart, it was exactly the chart of Aurora.
right.
You know, same with Canopy.
Yeah,
And it pulled away. I'm watching. You know, I got futures up now, and it's not bad. It's nothing crazy. You know, 0.34% for the open. You know, look, you watch what's going on before you go to bed. See what's happening in Asia. See what the futures market's going to look like when times are tough in the cannabis industry, because you know what people need to realize is this sector is amazing in terms of like rate of return. You know, think about it this way: if you had your money in one of the best mutual funds out there, you're looking at like a 10% return a year. We do 10% a day on, you know, cannabis stocks. So you know what that means when things start getting sour is we're going to get pulled down twice as hard.
right.
So like last week or after legalization, it was just kind of the perfect storm for pot stocks.
It was, yeah, yeah.
So, you know, but
Um,
that's why, you know, people need to be disciplined and take money. You know, like here, you know, like if I'm in a stock and it runs 100%, I take half the stock out, regardless of do I feel like it's going to do anything. I take 50% off the table because now I'm completely de-risked.
yeah,
You know, you,
exactly.
you have to do that. Like trade pops, like watch patterns, like T-God. You know, when that thing runs big, if that thing has like a 50-cent run in it, it's going to pull back 20 cents. It's like a clock. It gives it back. You know, the market needs its pound of flesh.
Yeah,
And, you know, like things need to cool off. Like you need to realize that.
yeah, and that's where, you know, and I'm not a big TA guy, but I do know some friends that are, and you know, you can use those technical, uh, signs to your advantage, right? I mean, especially now at the S&P, I think the market's going to get a little bit more smarter and starting to figure it out. Like, okay, I really got to keep my eye on the S&P here because it definitely is a correlation. But you know, that's why I think over the next, you know, 6 to 8 weeks for sure, I think the S&P will probably go on a, you know, a little bit of a run up, and I think it's good timing for the cannabis sector. And if we can get a few catalysts in there, then Bob's your uncle. We're gonna make money.
Yeah. Make hay while the sun shines, even on the shitty companies.
Well, dude, are we getting a little stale here? We do. You know what? So John, are you there? Our TA, a close friend of mine, is sort of a co-host. I think he's in the back end listening. Um, if you want to join in, join in. Is there a chart that you'd want to see, Jason?
I'm not a chartist,
Not a
so
chartist.
you know, if you put a chart in front of me and said, okay, pick out the, you know, the three crows or the reverse doji, and you said, I'll give you $1,000,000 if you tell me which one, you know, keep your money. I don't chart. Like I've never made money charting. I've, you know, I remember where things were, and, you know, I look for, I look for patterns, you know, I'm looking for like fucking, you know, does this snowflake look like that snowflake? And I, you know, I read sentiment. Like, you know, I spend all night cash tagging and just seeing what people are saying, and then just try and get a gauge on it. You know,
What's this company CXXI? People keep asking about it. That's the ticker.
that's the one that the chart looks like shit.
Okay. By the way, friends, I know my mic is poo. It's actually a really high-end mic, but for some reason it doesn't work as good as I thought, so we'll take it back. Fuck, dude.
Look,
Yeah.
people should just ask the stupidest questions. You know, ask what, like, you got me on.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Canopy Rivers.
Nah.
Nah. RTI.
Nope.
Heritage Cannabis Corp. CAN is the ticker. Oh, here, I got a topic for you. Timothy Skites?
Timothy Sykes?
Site? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Someone told me today that you had some little beef with him. So
dude, I didn't have a beef with Timothy Sykes. So the story behind Timothy Sykes is in 2014, when I'm running hot, a guy calls me up and he's like, hey, my name is Eric Hedegaard. I'm, you know, from Rolling Stone. And I was like, fuck you, you're from Rolling Stone. So I have my iPad out and I'm like fucking putting in his name. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's with Rolling Stone for 30 years. So I go into like character and I start talking to him and he's like, we want to do a story on you. And I was like, great. So he comes and stays with me for like 3 days. And it's at the time, like, I'm just trying to fuck with Timothy Sykes, or Timothy Sykes is just trying to fuck with me. He's just talking shit. And I was like, I don't know who this fucking guy is. I go, I know. He's like trolling me. And, you know, because he sells like DVDs and, you know, he likes younger girls and I'm just kind of like fucking no holds barred. And so the guy's like, I need to meet with Tim Sykes too. And I was like, what? You know, because he saw like me and him going back and forth, and Tim's got a big following and Tim's a smart marketer. Right. So anyway, Tim fucking weasels his way into the Men's Journal thing. And he's just a fucking, like, Tim Sykes he's just a douchebag. You know, there's nothing likable about him. There's nothing redeeming. Like, I feel bad for the guy. You know, like, he's got his wife or girlfriend, whatever. She was like 19. He's like 30 something. You know, he's like the kind of guy that pays for sex. Right. So anyway, he weasels his way and he gets into this Men's Journal piece. He's in there for literally like a page, and they do a photo shoot, and you know, he's in there with me. He's like, oh, like Tim Sykes and Jay Spatafora square off. Well, so then the guy Eric comes and stays with me, and then a couple months later, he's like, oh, I need to, you know, Men's Journal. Oh, Rolling Stone, because it was supposed to be Rolling Stone at the time, wants you guys to meet and have dinner. And I was like, okay. And I go, I'm not fucking engaging this guy. I go, he's a fucking douchebag. I go, so you don't
respect him. You didn't respect him.
You know what? I didn't respect what he was doing. I respect that he was trying to market, and you know, but I just think that he's just a fucking cunt. Is really what it comes down to. Like, my wife says, if you ever see Tim Sykes, like, you have full permission to like punch him in the face. And I was just like, you've got my blessing. Because he's just a brick. Okay. I mean, look at his shit. I mean, look, any guy that uses a profile picture that's 15 years old is a douchebag. But anyway, so
did he have an Ed Hardy shirt on?
I'm surprised. I'm sure there's a picture somewhere with an Ed Hardy. Look at his Instagram. It's like the guy's a twat. Like, Dan Blazarian was like, I'm gonna beat you up, and he's like, I'm sorry, and like apologize. It's really funny.
Sounds like a trolling type of guy.
So, dude, he kills it. He makes a ton of money. He sells fucking DVDs, and he teaches people how to short, and that's it. But you know, like, if the guy, you know, like, had AIDS and somehow my blood could cure him, I tell him to fuck off.
All right. Okay, there's your
answer.
All right. Back to cannabis. James E. Wagner. Did I butcher that?
James E. Wagner?
Wagner? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I
Who
butchered
the
that.
hell is that? It sounds like a serial killer.
It's a cannabis play, man. All right, we'll
Sounds like a serial killer.
Emerald Health.
Emerald Health?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all right. They got a lot of, they got really nice tomato farm.
This is true. TGIF, what are they? 1933 Industries now?
TGF is one of my boys. That's Braden Sutton.
Okay, it's your boy.
I got nothing bad to say about Braden Sutton. He's a smart guy.
Listen, people, you better get some comments in there because we're
Tim Sykes. Ha!
Okay. Last chance for comments here, friends. Not even gonna touch a baddest. Just leave that alone.
Yeah, that AIDS.
How long have we been going here, friends?
2 hours. Oh, whatever.
Acreage Pharma.
The one that's going public?
Yeah.
Hardest private.
What's that?
Yeah, hardest private placement to get. Okay. Minimum 25,000 buy-in, and that's like for 1,000 shares.
They've got a really strong board, eh?
Yeah, John Boehner and a former PM.
Yeah,
they're crushing it though. They do a lot, but I think it's I didn't. At first, I was all gung ho to get the private placement, but then I'm like, I think this fucking pulls back, so I'll just wait.
Right. Are you're in on the PP?
No, I'm not. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna buy it in the open market. I'll wait for it to dip.
Okay, I gotcha. I can't remember if that IPO round wasn't it free? Isn't it free trading?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's free trading. All right. They'll gap it up.
I know someone with a $500,000 allocation. Actually, you know him too. His name's James West.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They gave James West a fucking $500,000 allocation.
I believe so. He mentioned it on his show.
That's fucking nuts. I need to be better friends with James West. Does he crush it? Does Midas Letter make a lot of money?
Midas Letter does well, man. We do a show with them every Wednesday, and the people there are awesome. They're creative. They just want to, they're just having fun and doing their thing. They love the cannabis sector like you. They're big fans of you. Yeah, man. To answer your question, they do well.
I need my own show. Fuck it.
Yeah. Well, fuck, dude. Like we're gonna be going to we're trying for 5 days a week on Midas, so I'm sure we'd like to have you on. But yeah, I mean, it's it's difficult when you're doing a show. Like right now, we're at 1 day a week, and they wanted us to go like an hour and a half, and it's hard to fucking talk and get content for that every single week. I mean, it gets a little bit stale. So hopefully we can get.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I mean, like, that's why I have no problem just doing shows, but I couldn't do this all week. Like once a week. Like right now, I'm fucking trying to do an ETF and then something else, and I'm just like, and trading and it's a lot. You got to figure out where to plant your flags. Right. So I'm trying to. I've got like one of the sickest developers in the world. He built Bitrex.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's done like platforms for Goldman Sachs and all this stuff. He's smart, and actually he's from Canada.
What's the so what are you guys getting into? Like what's your idea?
My idea? Yeah. Building the Robin Hood for weed.
The Robin Hood for weed. Okay. I'm not going to ask you any more about it because it seems like maybe it's not a good time.
Nah, it's fine, because unless you're willing to fucking throw millions of dollars at it, then you can't do it. So it's basically you know, it's like, well, there's E-Trade, there's TD Ameritrade. Well, there's nothing specific for pot stocks. This is it.
My apologies, man. Someone was texting me a question for you,
What
and
was it?
it was, when do you think the next big catalyst will be in the MJ space, i.e., like a Diageo deal publicly announced?
Yeah, like whenever they fucking put the PR out, that's when it'll be. I can't predict that. I'm not, you know, I'm not Biff from Back to the Future getting the sports almanac. I wish. If I did know, I wouldn't tell any of you fuckers.
Are you surprised we haven't seen more mergers right now? I mean, I was thinking in the next couple weeks here, somebody's going to drop a deal. I mean, why would you not drop a deal to ignite this market right now? You've got the wind. You could have the wind behind your backs here.
Because you can get everything at a 40% discount.
This is true. Oh, right now, you mean? Yeah, but you should be able to get that again in February, March, April.
Oh, yeah. But I also think that that's part of it. That's probably why I also think that that's part of why we dropped.
Right. Goes back to the manipulation.
Yeah, of course. Wouldn't you do it?
Well, dude, I mean, a lot of people. There's a lot of rumors on Bay Street, you know, that the big banks and funds and all that were like, listen, we want deals. We're willing to fuck with you guys, but we want it at not this valuation. So, you know, I'm thinking there should be something coming here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm like you. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, look, they'll run it back up, and then they'll short it back down, and then they'll run it back up. So, you know, the trick is finding that equilibrium somewhere in between.
Yeah. All right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, these fucking headphones are killing me now.
Are they?
Yeah, I've had them on my head for 2.5 hours.
Okay, but hold on. I saw you put ice under your ass there, man. Like, what's going on with that? Like,
I got my bag of ice right here. I took it off.
Holy shit, man. So what, you got another day or two of that?
Yeah, probably.
All right. Okay, well, dude, listen, from our community, and there it is. I'm just seeing the delay now of the bag ice. All the people behind FTMIG, we want to thank you for coming on and you know, giving our Facebook group community your time. We appreciate it. I've been following you for at least 3 years now. You're awesome. Again, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say thanks. You know, I appreciate coming on. You know, if you want to get a hold of me, wolf@marijuanastocks.com. I answer my emails. I even end up taking phone calls. I hope none of you are serial killers. But look, you know, I'm easy to get a hold of. And if you have a question, even if you don't like me, fucking ask. Like, you're not going to offend me.
Agreed.
So thank you. I'm glad I could come on. I hope you had a bunch of viewers. How did we do?
Yeah, we got over 300, man. That's pretty good for a Sunday night, and definitely good for us. You know, and we do that show on Midas, so I'm sure we can bug you, you know, when there's some fun shit going on in cannabis, or maybe there's some stupid deal out there that people need to know, like, hey, you know, do some DD on. We'll bring you on Midas or whatever, and we can talk about it. We don't have to go for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then who knows? We got the EMD down here, so, you know, maybe we can even get into some fun stuff and make some money together. Who knows?
Are you guys going to Vegas?
We haven't planned on it. Why are you going there? It's a conference?
November. I think everybody should go. You need an excuse. It's November. It's the MJ Biz Expo.
Okay.
I'm going from the 12th of November to 16th. The conference goes from the 14th to the 16th. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's the 1 week out of the year where my wife's like, you can do whatever you want.
I won't ask any questions about that, but
well, she comes with me for like 3 days.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, my wife's super cheap. My wife's, you know, she's got money. I've got the prenup to prove it, but she's like super fucking cheap. Like, but she keeps me from like doing stupid shit. But yeah, like she lets me go crazy, so it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, fuck. I'm not going to be there, but I'll put it on my calendar for next year. Yeah, have you been to Toronto?
Of course. I love
Okay.
Lee's. Lee's is like my favorite place. I always tell people to take me to Lee's because I want the slaw.
Dude, I haven't even been.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I haven't been, man.
Jesus Christ.
So what do you come here for? Like for a conference?
Yeah, I go to see my friends.
Oh, you got friends. You just come to hang out.
Yeah, I come to hang out. I get like a dope Airbnb, and
Yeah.
I'll go see all my friends that own grows, or or are CEOs of public companies.
Got it. Little business and pleasure.
Exactly.
All right. Well, dude, if you come to Toronto next, I'm sure you will. I'd love to sit down and have a beer with you and shoot the shit about cannabis. But thanks for coming on the live. And if you want to dodge out, go for it. I'm probably going to bring in our chart guy, and we're going to talk about a couple mining fucking stocks and maybe the wheat S&P.
Good luck with that. I'm going to go smoke some weed.
All right, dude. Go ice your balls, man. You got ice those balls.
Man. Thanks. I will.
Later, bro.
Later, bud.
All right. Well, that was amazing. Jason Spatafora hooking it up. FTMIG live. John, are you here? Hanging around in the background, eh? All right, dude. Let's get right into fucking Garibaldi. I'm definitely catching a cold. Let's look at the Garibaldi chart, if you don't mind.
Can people actually see that?
All right. Yeah, let's look at it, man.
So, what do you want to talk about on the Garibaldi chart? The bad news, or
yeah, everybody's talking about fucking doomsday here. So let's give them an idea of where potentially, based on last support. Let's look at the next couple support areas for the Garibaldi friends.
Okay. Well, I think to find some support on Garibaldi, we have to go back over a year to the run that we had last summer, fall. So we broke support in the 130s, in my opinion. Especially the candle on Friday. A lot of selling. You could argue that we did it on Thursday because we closed below, but the candle on Friday really knocked that home, in my opinion. So to me, we're looking all the way back to these dips here. So in early September 8th, September 7th, we hit lows of 103. And then we had another test on September 14th at 106. So, for me, the next support zone that we would expect on Garibaldi would be, low $1 range, somewhere between $1, 105, 106. Ultimately, when you're trying to say, okay, where's the stock going to find support? It has to be somewhere where you have a lot of buyers. The buyers are going to overwhelm the sellers, and you have a combination of a lot of buyers and the sellers sort of dry up at that area. We certainly had a lot of supply come on the market Friday out of nowhere, and you can blame it on, everyone has their theory on what's going on. You can blame it on whatever you want. Manipulation, but ultimately, if you have a bunch of buyers on a stock, if someone's trying to push the price down, and nobody is selling, none of the longs that hold shares are selling, and everyone's just loading up, somebody is only going to be able to push that so low before they're forced to sort of cover a short position. The way that this works, if you're gonna start shorting the stock or trying to manipulate it, you're throwing a bunch of supply on the market, supply of shares. That's only going to work if you're flushing people out of their positions. So I mean, that's probably what we're seeing. I think, like I said before, there's a lot of nervous Garibaldi shareholders out there. I mean, there's lots of people that the way they talk said, I'll take my shares to my grave, sort of thing. That, you know, they're not going to let go, and all they're going to do is add. But I think there's a lot of people that are kind of feeling nervous right now, and you know, whether they haven't done enough due diligence or they've overextended themselves, maybe taken too big of a position, or they didn't realize that this is the kind of thing that you get in the junior resource markets. I mean, this is par for the course. If you're going to invest in junior resource stocks, there's nothing riskier, in my opinion, than junior resource stocks. So this sort of volatility, you have to expect it. So yeah, that's where I see the next sort of line in the sand being drawn is in the low dollar range. You know, on Friday we did see some buyers starting to show up on the market depth, and some bids show up, and that's what we need to see ultimately. That, you know, any more supply that we see come on the market starts to get scooped, and you know, people are going to be buying those shares and holding them. You know, if there's a lot of traders in the stock, again, as I mentioned, you know, the traders are going to buy the stock and then they're going to sell it, you know, 10-20% higher. That supply is right back on the market again. So the only way the stock is ever going to get a foothold and start to rebound is if you have, you know, people with conviction willing to buy and hold and take supply off the market and soak up the supply of shares. That seems to be, you know, we've been seeing it since the first set of assays. There's just lots of supply coming, and there's not enough buyers. So,
right,
you know, the stock will move to the point where we all of a sudden we get lots of buyers, and you know, we run out of shares to buy, and then, you know, it's going to head up from there. So, you know, if we somehow manage to break this $1 to 105 range, excuse me, then I think we might be, you know, people might not like me saying it, but we might be heading back down to the, you know, the 70 cents area, because we spent a lot of time there in the past. You know, there was a lot of consolidation. That was sort of the range after it had done its big run. We spent a lot of time in that 70 cents area. We had dips into the 60s that the bulls are, you know, I remember vividly last year, the bulls were always buying these dips into the 60s, and we spent a lot of time around, say, 70 cents, give or take. So we know there's lots of buyers there. So, you know, if for some reason the support doesn't hold at a dollar, you know, range, then I think there's a good chance that that's where we might end up. Not to say that we will, but it's saying, okay, where have we historically seen the buyers show up? And that's what we need to see. So if we can't hold, you know, this level here, you know, somewhere around there, you know, I think of support as a zone, usually more as opposed to a single price level, but, you know, roughly that $1 to $1.05 range. I think, you know, that's if we can't hold there, then we're heading back to 70 cents. And I mean, I'm not doing this to scare people. It's just my, you know, honest opinion. I'm a Garibaldi long. I've owned shares for a long time. I haven't sold any personally. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we lose that support at a dollar. If it gets tested, that 70 cents is the next, you know, the next stop that we have to go. So
I'd hate to do this because I know, you know, you're just breaking down the TAs, but I got to ask you, if we were to get down there, do you think this is where, or even anywhere around $1 or in the 90 cent range, you think buyers flooded? Because a lot of retail is tapped, right? I mean, they're just fucking tapped. So it's like, who's gonna step in at 70, 90 cents? You think there's some funds? You know, we know that they were out in Germany, Lightfoot doing his presentation. There are lots of people watching this stock. I mean, you can't argue that from even from a valuation now, or, you know, say a valuation that's 20% lower than what we are now. You think some funds step in and start accumulating on a daily?
It's possible. I think there have been some funds in Garibaldi, and I know that because I've seen signs of them selling. You know, the type of selling that we've seen. I think I picked up on Warren Irwin liquidating his position. I just noticed like the type of selling that was going on, the way the shares were hitting the market, very typical in my experience of an institutional seller. So, you know, funds have taken positions in Garibaldi. I'm not sure how many are left or how big, But yeah, I think having some institutional buyers come in and take positions would be helpful, because I do agree. I think retail is tired. You know, a lot of people that are buying shares now, they're already in big positions, and it's not like they're, you know, they're not throwing huge, they're not coming into this, in my opinion anyway, as new investors. They've already been Garibaldi longs, and they're sort of, you know, maybe redirecting funds from other investments because they feel like the price is getting really cheap, or, you know, they're adding as their paychecks come in, adding a few shares here and there. But I think to really make a stand and to give this a solid base that it could bounce off on and turn around this momentum, you know, you need to convince some big money to come in and buy. You have to provide them some sort of evidence that, you know, it's a good buy at this level. So, you know, as of now, we're not, you know, in my opinion, we haven't seen the evidence of any like big institutional buying yet. And I think when we see that, it'll become known, because, you know, the price we'll see a nice firm support show up. And, you know, ultimately we want to see the trend change. We want to see the stock stop making, you know, new lows like it has been. We're making new 52-week lows, and you need to see the trend change. So, you know, have the buyers buy the dip, and the next time it dips, it doesn't dip as low, right? We make a higher low and we pivot from there, get past the previous high, and turn the trend around. And yeah, I think getting some big money in from some institutional investors would do a lot here. You know, is there potential that Eric Sprott could come in with you know, approval from the company, perhaps at the AGM? That's always a possibility that they could work something like that. Obviously, Eric Sprott, when he was buying, you know, he kept things strong on the buy side. When you have that sort of investor buying that amount of shares, and those shares don't come back on the market, they're locked up and they disappear from the supply. I mean, that's kind of what you need to give the stock a really solid footing. So, you know, are there other, you know, type of investors like Eric Sprott out there? I don't know. I think the company would do well if they could pitch to institutional investors and try and get some fund buying in here to anchor the stock, because yeah, I think retail is tired.
Okay. So we're on the same page with that. What about, there's still a lot of assays to come out, dude.
Absolutely.
You know? I mean, we know.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's assume that, yes, we're not going to get anything for a couple weeks at best, right? And you've got this downward pressure. You've got, you know, some panicking. Hey, and we haven't even talked about, you know, possible tax loss or tax loss season. If we were to get some pretty good results coming out in the assays, knowing that, I mean, it's definitely in 2 weeks, the drilling has stopped. That's still an assumption, but whatever. Do you think funds would wait until January, February, or do you think they see the results and like, okay, because, you know, they've been maybe plugging it into their database and following? I mean, we've heard those rumors, dude, that, you know, there are some majors that are really paying attention to the story.
Yeah, I think it's going to vary depending on who the person is. I mean, there are plenty of people that go tax loss season shopping. You know, their goal is the exact opposite of the people that are selling at a loss. They're looking to pick up stocks that are, you know, that basically get oversold because people are dumping it. They're in a loss to offset their gains for the year. So, yeah, you know, can we have some of that buying in December? Absolutely. You know, there's also the winter months to consider, right? You know, there wasn't a lot of news flow for Garibaldi between January and, you know, I think April or May. I mean, it's the winter season. They're not going to be drilling on Nickel Mountain. So unless the company finds a way to, you know, come out with other news that's going to get the market excited, there's also, you know, that period of say 4 or 5 months that could provide some accumulation opportunities. And you have to factor in as well that given the sort of the volatility we're seeing in the global markets, especially the US right now, that, you know, if somebody, if you're an institutional investor and you have the sort of the risk on your mind, managing risk, and you know that, you know, Garibaldi's not going to be drilling for another 5 months, then are they going to want to wait for a few months to start sort of positioning themselves for next year's drilling season? And that sort of isolates themselves in the meantime for any sort of risks that could happen in the US. And, you know, things could go either way in the US. The S&P could recover, you know, we could hit new highs again. We could get consolidation for months, sort of, you know, lower highs but higher lows. Or we could, you know, we could start making new lows again. There's, you know, there's a few different scenarios that could play out. And, you know, obviously we won't know that until they actually happen. So there's lots of factors here. I think, you know, assays, when they come out, because there's lots of news still to come on the company. So if these assays start to impress or surprise people, I think that it ultimately comes down to what is the market expecting, and then what does the company put out. So if the company exceeds expectations in the market, and expectations are built into the price, you know, expectations are kind of driving the price, then yeah, maybe we could see some good rallies. But what I want to see, and we haven't seen it yet, is I want to see these rallies hold. So, and I think that's when we know we've sort of found our bottom, is if, you know, we had the news this week, a couple more assays, and the stock went up, and then it sold off. And then it sold off on the previous news as well. All the supply coming on, not enough buyers. So, you know, let's see some more assays. They've got lots of holes. There could be lots of exciting holes to come. I'm optimistic. But it comes down to, okay, the money that's sitting on the sidelines, whether it's, you know, new investors, whether it's majors that are keeping their eye on the stock, or whether it's an institutional investor, whoever it may be, you know, they're going to have certain expectations. And if the news comes out and it's like, wow, okay, we didn't expect these intervals, these grades, then yeah, they're going to start buying stocks. So the year is not over for Garibaldi. I don't want to come across as painting too negative of a picture, because there's lots of news still to come. You know, the story is just starting to be told, right? And we have all next year drilling. The company's got lots of money. They don't need to go to market to raise money, so we don't have to worry about that pressure, you know, coming on the stock for a financing. So that's a really good thing. But, you know, where do we go in the next 2 months? I think the results will dictate that. And if they can come up with some results that surprise the market, then maybe that's our rally point.
Well, I certainly hope so, man. Well, thanks for giving us your thoughts on that. You know what? Let's jump over to CCW. Why not? There's a zone on the CCW chart. I think it's around 64 to 67 cents. It'd be pretty cool to check it out on your end. You know, that they need to break that. It's strong resistance of warrant selling that we've talked about. And if they can break that, they could be close to, well, I think 90 was their high. So that would be the next resistance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would put, I'll just annotate this real quick. I actually should make that red because it's resistance. So, you know, the stock has been, as you know, as mentioned in previous shows, we've been in this, I would call it a fairly tight trading range, and this is just churn to me. So there's a lot of supply coming on the market. I've given my opinion that it's warrants just because I've seen the share count coming up. I know the last financing was also done at 65 cents. So, and I'm not sure when that comes free trading. It might be another month. Don't quote me on that, but we might be seeing some of that money come off early as well. And again, if anyone, you know, some of the people that got in on this financing can just take their original capital off and sit on their warrants, there's a lot of people it'll take that sort of deal. But, you know, the trend to me, you know, it has been in a downtrend, and we saw the lower lows, lower highs, and then we've kind of broken that, because when we had this test this was a news day, you know, we didn't get down to that same low. So the stock showed a nice rebound, and we've stuck to this level. There's been buyers, enough buyers to soak up the supply, which is good. And we closed on a high, which was nice to see on Friday. That news came out late. So, you know, is it priced into the market yet? I don't think so. I think we need to see how it reacts on Monday. But this, you know, this was a nice candlestick. It basically got to the same high that we got to the last time that news came out. But, you know, we closed there. So this is the highest close we've had in quite a while. We go back to, looks like late August since we've closed this way. So I look at this peak as the same, you know, the same sellers. They seem to really like this mid 60s area, mid low 60s area, even high 60s. This is the same sellers, I think, all dumping their stock. So if we get through there, I think that's a really good sign. You know, yeah, I think there'd be a good chance, you know, we get through this on volume. We're probably heading up to test our, you know, our 52-week high in that 86 to 90 area, that resistance zone. So, you know, that would be a nice move, obviously, to get up into that zone. Now, whether we make it all in one move or not, I'm not sure. I think just pushing through here convincingly, if we get a little bit of consolidation and retest this area and show that it's become support, we pivoted it to support, would be a really good sign that we're headed into here, and we might make a run into blue sky territory, which would be challenging that resistance area. So that's what I'm looking at. I think it's the chart looks good. The trading's interesting. We didn't get a sell on news like we did the previous time, which is good. I did note that when the news came out, there wasn't a lot of volume. It was like, you know, the people that I still got the impression that most people were in already. People were buying in anticipation of news. And the company did give us that guidance, right? They basically said on the last news release within 7 to 10 days. So everybody knew that news was coming. And so, you know, a lot of people were in early, but then we saw finally some shares, some buyers start to come in late in the day. So let's watch for follow through on Monday. Let's see if we can break some of these highs. I think the high here was 68. So let's see us get out of the 60s into the 70s on some volume. I think that would be very bullish for the stock. You know, I would look for, you know, look on the chart where are some of your resistance levels here around 74. These are some of your previous highs, so you could look, you know, at those areas for potential points of hang up. But ultimately, I think if we're through this area, because we've seen so many shares hit the market here, there's been so much supply. If we push through this on volume, that tells you there's a lot of buyers that have overwhelmed what used to be the seller dominant area, and we've soaked up enough supply that I think we make a push into the the high 80s or the 90-cent level. That's how I would expect it to play out. But
well, I hope you're right. I know we have a lot of CCW shareholders in our community, and I'd love to see them to get past this sort of resistance that we've been in for a while, this consolidation pattern. What else, man? What else are you watching? Do you want to bust out the weed chart?
I just wanted to bring up the stock watch because I think this is another thing we have to watch. So this share structure is so important in junior companies, and you have to know when these shares are going to hit the market. So July 25th, so 4 months from now, August, September, October, November. So, okay, so we're in a 3-week window now where we know we have 2 million shares at 65 cents that were issued. So that could be a bit of a drag on the stock. That is something to take into account. We might get a push. If we get a push in the short term, would it surprise me if that became a drag on the stock? No. Because, you know, there will be people in here that are tempted to sell their, take their original capital out, sit on their warrants. It was a 1-to-1 warrant deal. As you can see, the exercise price is 90 cents. So, you know, I think we could see some of that pressure, and we might already be starting to see that in this zone that we're in. It's a little bit early, but I tend to look about a month out from the free trading date, and especially within 2 weeks. So, I mean, November 29th. So we would be, I think we're what, 3 weeks, 3.5.
Yeah.
So, you know, something like that. I think we're within 3.5 weeks. Yeah, but that's, you know, that's life, right? So you have to deal with those financings, and so it's something to, you know, to keep in mind, that if we do get a run, that could be sort of a dampering effect. And it's not to say that it would destroy the run. You know, hopefully they have some strong shareholders in there, but you're always going to get some selling pressure. And, you know, preferably when you're a company, you're trying to fill these financings, you want people that are going to sort of work with you and not just, you know, dump their cheap paper on the market ruthlessly and not care about the price. You know, there's a way to sell, and there's a way to sell sort of responsibly so you don't destroy the momentum. And hopefully, you know, the shareholders in that placement are in that category.
Well, yeah, especially if you have the, you know, the fundamentals behind you on whatever their results are. You know, it's like, shit, man. Like, yeah, you want to get into some profit and sit on your warrants, I'm sure, but it's like, if you guys are selling, if you're the ones offering the liquidity and the selling pressure, just relax. Like honestly, like, where would CCW be right now if some of these shareholders in the earlier, like the 20-cent PP, I think it was, you know, where would the stock be right now if they were just chill on the market side a little bit? I mean, you could be up around the 80-90 cents maybe.
Yeah. On the other hand, too, it's probably allowed some players to get bigger positions without running the stock up. And that turnover of the float, I mean, turning it over from the people that are in really early to the people that might be, you know, either taking a new position or trying to add to their position, and then, you know, get the price set for its next run. You know, I don't mind seeing this sort of consolidation here within a range, as long, you know, obviously if you're long on the stock, as long as it breaks to the upside, that's a good sign, because it's okay. The shares are moving hands from weak hands to strong hands. And it could be, you know, the sellers could be people that are still long the stock, but they want to trim off, you know, they want to take some profit or hedge their positions, whatever it may be. But that also allows other people to get in too. So, you know, those people now have would bring their cost base up, say in the 50s or 60s, and they're looking, you know, they might be looking for CCW to, you know, to hit $1.50 before they start to sell significantly. So you're turning the float over, and that's just normal. If they have a bunch of good news coming, then that would help. That would provide the liquidity to help deal with maybe the private placement shares that were issued at 65 cents. And it's not like it was big. There's only 2 million shares there, so it's not like you have tens of millions, which is good. It's at least it's a number that you can work with.
Okay. Do you want to look at the canopy chart?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, what do I see in the canopy chart? Again, sort of the TA 101. So what I see here, and I've mentioned this before, is sort of resistance becomes support. So on the way up, it's around $49 level. We got that rejection. So, there's lots of supply here, not enough buyers to take it off the market. The market has to correct, push it down. We got through there after the Constellation deal was announced. The area was tested, it held and pivoted off there. So now we've pivoted resistance to support, which is good. In this area, as you could see, and it's a zone, again, think of it as a zone, that this area basically served as a support zone when we had that big sell-off in the market where we had the big gap down. We did get a bounce off there. And then, away we go right through the support, big red candle. The volume wasn't crazy, but we closed well below. And now we're kind of back up to the same level again. And you see, you know, over the last couple of days, I'll just get rid of that line, that we're kind of churning in that same area. I hope this makes it a little easier to see. But, you know, these doji candlesticks, you know, that's basically showing an indecision in the market. And this candle is actually falling within the shadow of the previous one. So we've got some consolidation going on here. Again, I would call this churning. And how this plays out, are we going to pop back up above and regain that support level, or is it going to have to bounce down first and maybe make like a higher low and then pivot off that? You know, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, on the way down, when the price was coming down, the 100-day moving average here in orange acted as a support as well. And I think that's because it happened to correspond with, you know, again, that previous zone that's resistance. Now it's support. So now it's going to be support again. So on the way back up, I expect that to act as resistance because we're trying to move through it. So, yeah, you know, come Monday, it'll be interesting to see if we have follow through. You know, the volume has been kind of dying off here in this consolidation. So if we get an increase on volume, we can push through the high of Friday and Thursday, then, you know, we're probably looking pretty good to regain, you know, to try and move our way back. And it's got a long ways to go to, you know, to get, you know, from where it hit its all-time high, 52-week high. There's, you know, there's no way this is going to go all the way back there. It's going to have to bounce around, obviously, in between. There's a big, you know, there's a lot of ground to make up here, and it's not going to happen all at once. I don't, you know, personally see any catalyst that would come for Canopy that would all of a sudden push us back into the $70 range with, you know, within short time frame anyway.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was hoping they'd get to close to $100 by the end of the year. I mean, you can't rule it out, but that would be a pretty big move.
Yeah. Like there's the hourly look. You can see, you know, consolidation in a fairly narrow range. So it's just bouncing back and forth, fairly tight trading. You can see these Bollinger Bands. This is a measure of your volatility, right? The orange is your Bollinger Bands, and those are tightening right up. So, you know, we're going to get a trading signal here one way or the other. You know, is it going to break up or is it going to break down? Are we going to lose the lows or are we going to break the highs? So, you know, if we break the lows, then it means more consolidating to do. I would hope that it holds this previous low here. But if not, I believe there are still open gaps on this chart. Yeah, there's a big gap here. That's from the Constellation deal. So
where is it? 30.
The low is at 38.17. Sorry, the top of the gap would be 38.17, and the bottom is 34. I mean, that would be a big drop. And you know, we have the 200-day moving average here support. So, you know, is that realistic? I don't necessarily think so. And we have we have support to around 39.50.
I got when it comes to these gaps, dude, it's like so many times we've talked about gaps, and you know, we said, oh, it's, you know, I don't really think it's gonna close there. That doesn't really seem realistic. And what happens? They close, man. It's funny.
Well, but you also have to think too, when you look at a gap, you have to really focus on like what's causing it, and you need volume. So a gap that just sort of appears out of nowhere and there's not a lot of volume supporting it, it's almost a certainty that it's going to close. Where like this gap, this was on the Constellation deal news release. I mean, that was a transformative deal for the company. You know, you can't argue that when it closed on August 14th and it opened on August 15th that it's the same company, right? That sort of news is transformative in nature. So, you know, this is just the market sort of upwards adjusting, you know, immediately for some really bullish news. So I would be really shocked. I think there'd be some major issues, you know, in the world markets and in the cannabis space if we close this gap and came right back down to, you know, to fill and all of that momentum from the Constellation deal and what it meant was lost. That, you know, that would be a pretty significant drop. And, you know, everybody that's losing their minds right now, I mean, I can't imagine how they'd feel the people that were buying in the 70s, and it's sitting at $50 now. How are they going to feel if if their stock's trading at 30? They've lost 50% of their money. There'd be a lot of capitulation going on, but there'd be a lot of opportunistic buyers just waiting to jump all over that too.
I remember being at a bank. Funny story. Canopy was sitting. Oh, I think it was sitting around $8, going back to whenever, 2 years ago or whatever. Oops. And so somebody at the branch, they shouldn't have been telling me this. They're like, yeah, you're in the cannabis stocks. I see. I'm like, yeah. They're like, we just we know someone that, like, one of their clients, I guess, mortgaged their home for Canopy, but he paid $12 a share, and the stock, went down to, I think the low was like $7 in that summer. And I always thought about that guy. I'm like, I wonder if he held. If he held, he's laughing, right?
Yeah.
It worked out. But I know there's so much volatility. You just wonder if somebody can take that, Anyways, it's basically.
Well, I'll tell you from personal experience, that's called, leverage investing. Just be sort of similar to people buying on margin, people taking a line of credit and buying in the market. There's nothing like pressure when you have borrowed money to invest and you suddenly find yourself underwater. I suspect it would have been very hard for that person to hold those shares. When you've borrowed money and you're down, the stock's trading at 7 and he's bought them at 12. He's almost at a 50% loss. It's different when you have, when you're risking money that's in your hands, it's in your account, versus where you've borrowed money that if you lose, you've got to repay that debt. That's a lot of pressure. And, from my own personal experience, and I know that this has played out for many other people as well, you tend to make very poor decisions, very emotional reactions when you've borrowed money to invest because of the pressure it places on you. It's going to make you sweat like nothing else. So, one thing to consider, all you guys that like to, borrow on your line of credit or go in on margin, I understand that can be a great move. You can make great money. It can be a good move tactically, but for a long-term hold, man, you can get yourself into some dicey situations and end up making some, bad decisions, when you borrowed money.
Speaking from my perspective, I mean, I'm not against it, but the circumstances that I would want to be in to be like comfortable with that would be like what we preach, here at Follow the Money, right? Which is getting in these nickel and dime raises or private companies that the management, them. You've developed that relationship, what their game plan is, there's some marketing and promotion behind it where they're going to be, creating a market. That type of situation, I'm for myself personally, I'm kind of okay with that. But man, looking back, it's always easy to go, yeah, that guy should have held his shares. But I remember it now. This was John. Do you remember the November halts of 2016?
Yeah, where
it was after that.
You're tripping circuit breakers multiple times a day.
Yeah. So what happened was there was a solid period, maybe over a month, where there was a lot of days, man, where it was like 12, 15, 20% gains in the cannabis space. And, people were just feeling that euphoricness. Like, I remember the conversations having with people like, whoa, man, fuck, I might take my $20,000 savings, buy Canopy and make 20% tomorrow. Like that type of shit. Yeah. So the guy mortgaged his house, and I think he had it paid off. He mortgaged his house and bought it at 12. It probably went up. He thought he was a genius, but I guarantee he didn't sell. And then it pulled back to, the lows. And that was a long period. I remember that. And there's so much speculation, and like nobody would have foreseen at that time that Canopy was going to go to where it did. But anyways,
well, yeah. And I guess in that sense, if he had his house paid off, I mean, that's essentially, it's not the same, but it's not that far off either, having money in account that's sort of sitting there. Like some capital that you're allocating. You know, obviously the consequences if you invest and you borrow against your house and you lose, then you end up with a mortgage again that you have to pay off. Whereas the line of credit, you know, for me personally, you know, in the past that I've done where I've borrowed money against the line of credit and then lost, and then you don't have any, you know, you don't have an asset to show for that, right? It's just a loss. So, but obviously balls of steel to, you know, to mortgage your house and put it in the cannabis space. But, you know, people, I'm sure he's not the only one that bet really big on cannabis. And, you know, if he held, then obviously he's done quite well for himself.
Yeah. Well, dude, do you have any charts that you want to pull up? I'll be honest with you. I've got to pee. I'm sick. And yeah, so I'd like to bounce, but if you've got something you want to talk about or whatever, let's do it. But if not,
no, I think I'm good with calling it a night, Carl. It's late where you are. It's late where I am. I think everyone, if there's anybody left watching, you know, I think we've lost most of the viewers. It was a long talk with Jason, really good talk, but yeah, I think everyone's probably ready to call it a night.
All right, dude. Well, thanks for sticking around there and doing this session with me after that long talk with Wolf. That was epic. You know, it shows that we're not just a Facebook group anymore, and there's still 38 viewers. So FTMIG.com, sign up, and yeah, we'll have a newsletter coming, and through our EMD, you can get access to private placements, which we're not saying you have to do them, but you definitely get an email. And why the fuck would you not want that? So on behalf of my close friend here, Jonny Mac, I'd like to thank everybody for sticking it out. And it's been a great night, and I look forward to next Sunday. Producer Wes, take us home, buddy. All right. Good night, John.
Good night. Cheers, everyone.